of your individual self and his individual self. One more thing very quickly, since we talked about intimacy, but I'm not going to go too much there because I know my brother Israel is going to go over that, is that intimacy, I like to think of intimacy as the ability to share all of you without compromising any of you. So when you leave that level, it really becomes very comfortable dependence. It allows really successful intimacy as well. So again, I just want to make clear that no one here misunderstands me. I'm not talking about pathological forms of dependency where you completely allow yourself to be obliterated, doesn't exist, or where you completely dissolve into him or herself or her ego. Because subhanAllah, some people get married, they have very low self-esteem, they have very low self-confidence, and they want to wear someone else's ego. So they're like, okay, let me get married, and they completely allow themselves to dissolve in the other person. At the beginning of the marriage, oh, that's so cute, she depends on me for everything. Then you have kids where you have to multiply your efforts, but guess what? She can't, or guess what? He can't. It becomes problematic. Okay? So, also actually forgot to say something about vulnerability that's really important, is that when someone allows themselves to be vulnerable with you, when your spouse allows themselves to be vulnerable with you, never, ever, ever use that information in a fight or in an argument. It compromises trust really, really badly. They've shared with you something, maybe that they haven't shared with anyone before. They shared with you a weakness, a vulnerability. Never throw it back in the face in a fight or an argument. It will really compromise your trust. I had someone who did that and complained for years and years and years of her husband being very guarded. You could tell her anything very bad that happens to him or any kind of weaknesses, and was very, very guarded for years, which ended up being all women obviously. Okay, the other thing is that when I was talking about power struggle and dependence, and I said I really prefer dependence to power, is that in an argument, in a marriage, you never want to have a winner and loser kind of situation. Sure, you'll win the battle, but let me tell you something, you're definitely going to lose the war. You're going to lose on your marriage. Because the loser will always make the winner pay somehow. In some of the worst ways, the loser makes the winner pay if they become passive aggressive. A female might withhold intimacy. A husband might all of a sudden become stonewall, completely non-responsive emotionally to anything. So they become this passive, silent kind of communication going on that's very, very deleterious for the marriage. So just keep that in mind. Never leave your partner feeling like a loser. Like you always have a win-win situation. Make sure that the other person really gets there, because just because they allow you to really get more than your share, they're going to resent that somehow. Okay, the other point that I'm sure you all here know is that men and women have different brains. So I'm sure we all know that, but for some reason, either women or men, they'll always say, well, you don't see things from my point of view. Yeah, you're right, she doesn't see things from your point of view because she has a different brain that she thinks with and thinks differently, perceives things differently. Even your visual system, like how you see the world, men and women are different. Like women see the color red differently, men see the color red differently. Like we have different worlds. We go around the world really differently. So keep that in mind. So we have very different brains, which means that we also, our anatomy of the brain is different, which means that we think about things, we approach things very differently. So let me give some examples with that. So for example, men or women from, I'm sure this is not surprising, from the day they're born, actually from before you're born, there are differences in brains. Girls start to talk before boys. Girls talk on average many more words before boys, which makes them very well suited for having an extensive social network. How does this relate to our topic today is what you're asking. And that is, when they looked at what's called your most inner circle of the people that you most confide in, people that you most trust with your very inner secrets. For females, they have more than one person. They have the husband in there, sure, but they have other people there too. Guess what it is for husbands? Only one person. This is not like Islamic research. This is like many different studies have showed this. They have one person in that circle. It's a wife. So a wife might have multiple best friends, and a husband might have only one best friend in that circle, and it's the wife. What does this mean again for the relationship? What this means is, if there is a trauma, if there's a crisis, he loses his job, God forbid, some sort of illness, really he has only you to depend on. Really he has only you to depend on. So I'm just going to say this case study, and I'm going to be talking to you. This brother, he lost his job, didn't have the guts to tell his wife, he was very embarrassed. Every day, gets up in the morning, has his coffee, gets ready, have a good day, what are you going to do today? Oh, I'm going to do this and that. Go to work, or lack of it. Comes at the end of the day, business day, for like a couple of months. And then, eventually, he's like, we gotta talk, I have to tell you something. I lost my job 2 months ago. Of course, the sister freaks out. So where have you been going? What have you been doing? Every single day, from morning to 5. How come I wasn't the first person to tell? Already with the assumption that he stole the whole world, and he spoke to them on Facebook, and really he hasn't told anyone. And not to be judgmental of the sister, because he didn't come to her and say, you know what, I've been meaning to tell you, but I don't want to disappoint you. And actually, you are the first person I've come to, but I didn't have the guts to disappoint you. Then the conversation would have been like, you know what, so let's sit down together. You have so many qualities, it's their loss. Let's figure out what qualities you have. Let's write your CV together. Let me see who I might network. Let me post something on Facebook. Let me do that. Then it would be a much more different conversation. Also, men do, when they approach relationships, not just with women, but also with other men, when they go out with their friends, they go out for a reason. Like, we're going to go out to watch the game, we're going to go out to paint the house. Females don't do that. Females can go out completely to just have coffee. So, are you mad at me? Are you guys talk about something? Are the kids okay? Yeah, we're just going to go out and have coffee. What do you guys think? I have no idea. There's no agenda. Again, how does this relate to today's topic? Is that men and women have a different access or orientation to our relationship. Men tend to have an exchange kind of orientation, where you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Women have a much more communal access to our relationship, where I'm just happy that you appreciate how I'm scratching your back. So it's a little bit different how we see it here. The other thing is that men's brains tend to be less lateralized, meaning that the right and the left side of the brain can do very different things. Women's brain, the right and the left can do similar things. Again, what does this mean? It means that for men, they cannot really multitask. For women, they can multitask. So a lot of the fights are things like, well, you know what, I'm cooking, I'm doing the spelling test, I'm reviewing your Quran. You're telling me that you're just doing this one thing and you can't do this alone. And really, you can't. And there's a perfect reason for that, at least from my understanding, is that mostly men are the breadwinners. And the decisions they make could mean that they might lose the house, they might not pay a certain payment, the family might be on the streets or whatever. So they really have gotten used to channeling all their energy, even though every decision is not as important as this one, to just one thing at a time. Not that women don't have to make important decisions. They absolutely do. But men got used to thinking that way. The other thing that's related to this topic here is that men and women have a different hormonal system. And the brain itself is under regulation of hormone system as well. So hormones fluctuate in both men and women, not just in women. For example, men's testosterone levels are lower in the morning than nighttime. Men's testosterone levels are lower in the fall than spring. But also lower levels of testosterone are associated with more irritability and aggressive tendencies. So sometimes it has nothing to do with the wife all of a sudden to change what happened, why are you so, and really it has nothing, you did nothing wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong, but it's just simple fluctuations in testosterone. I'm not saying that your communication goes and holds the entire fall, but I'm saying that type of communication maybe should change if such changes are going on. Same thing with females. There's fluctuations that are associated with different life stages. Postmenopausal, perinatal, prenatal, all of these different kind of fluctuations, monthly fluctuations. But guess what? Hormones have an effect on your behavior, on your mood, on the the type of thinking you do, and very much so on your relationship and interactions. So both of you need to take that into consideration, and it's something that's very much worthy of a communication session. The other thing here is that always give in the language of the receiver, not in the language of the giver. So if you want to show your wife appreciation, you gotta know what language she speaks. If you want to show your husband appreciation, you gotta know what language she speaks. I remember this lady who was really upset because every single birthday she got some sort of electronic gadgets and she can't even work her iPhone. You really gotta ask about each other. I think I'm gonna stop here because I'm getting very kind looks. She's a very kind moderator. Are you asking me something? Okay. Okay. So just let me know. I don't wanna. Okay. I'm okay. 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 All right. So again, you really have to find out how you give in the language of the receiver, not in your own language. If you want to give them a lesson on how you like to be appreciated and you want to demonstrate how you want to be treated, that's completely fine. But if that's not your intention, then you gotta ask, well, how do you like to be appreciated? And be frank about how you like to be appreciated. The other thing that I found in like so many different studies that looked at the characteristics of what happy people who've been married for a long time of life is that they all use humor. They use humor so they can argue and all of a sudden just laugh. And some of you are nodding because it looks like you've been through situations like this, or you just bust out laughing in the middle of the argument. That's actually a very healthy sign. That's a really healthy sign. I'm not saying that every argument you're going to have to look up a comedian and see how you can crack a joke. I'm not saying that. Some arguments are very serious, and that's not appropriate. But in the everyday, because guess what? Married people argue sometimes every day. And that's also completely fine. But if you can find humor there, here and there, that's probably a positive sign. We're going to talk about to be comfortable with silence. Is that what you're doing right now? Not. But just for the sake of time, we have to move on. Thank you for sharing all of the stories, and thank you for sharing all of the studies and all of the things that you learned. I think that it helps us to inshallah, maybe understand some of the things that have happened or some of the misunderstandings that have happened. And to move on to our next topic, we covered this a little bit, and Sheikh will be speaking about love languages and intimacy. It's a topic that's usually a little bit ignored by our community and is uncomfortable, but it's a topic that is, half of the marriage is related to this, so inshallah we'll stick on that. Sheikh Kamil received a bachelor's degree in social work and a bachelor's in Sharia from Al-Azhar, and he is the doctor of Muslim. And sorry, before you start, I'm going to pass out cards that are blank on either one side or both sides. And if you guys have any questions, please write them down, and inshallah we'll collect them, and afterwards we'll go through them and answer your questions.
I've been given the most difficult subject of the whole thing in my life. Alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam al-Ghazali, he said something amazing actually in the Kitab al-Nikah, on the chapter related to marriage. And he said something very profound, very profound. He said that, this world that has its limitations and we experience certain things that bring us pleasure and that bring us joy and happiness and all of that. The next life, the joy, the ni'mah, the bliss, the na'im, all that we experience is something that is beyond our human comprehension in this world. The Prophet described Jannah, he says, مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَمَا خطر على قلب بشر. That in Jannah you have something that no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, and no one can even imagine the joys of Jannah. But then he said, but in this world, there is one thing that comes close. There's one thing that comes close. And he said that is the intimate relationship that a husband and wife share with one another, which is amazing. And which, if you really understand that statement, you understand the importance of, of intimacy in Islam, intimacy between husband and wife, and how much, how sacred that relationship is. Number one, that it's done in the proper environment, under the proper pretenses in marriage between husband and wife, man and woman, versus what you see in society today, where it's just absolute chaos in terms of how sex is manifested, in this world, and how it's absolutely embraced and debased, and so on and so forth, because it's not done within holy matrimony. So the issue of intimacy is a very, very important and integral part of the marriage relationship. The marriage relationship is many, many things. It's emotional. There is there is this physical aspect to it. There are all of the different aspects that relate. If you have a family, if you have kids, there's that is a a relationship that develops outside of the, or as a result of the union of man and woman, and so on and so forth. So there's many, many layers to marriage. One of the core aspects of the relationship between husband and wife is that intimate relationship. And if that relationship is not right, it can have a bearing on everything else. Because if you look at that as the core, because in one sense it is the most intimate thing that husband and wife can share with one another. Sister Dr. Malwa put it very beautifully when she said that the intimate relationship between the physical relationship between man and woman is most experienced, or is deepest in its meaning, when those two individuals, and these are her words, not mine, that those two individuals are able to be naked with each other emotionally. Do you understand what that means? That they can be naked with each other emotionally, meaning that all of their fears and their guards and their, there's nothing, they're not worried about any reprimand from the other side. If they tell them something, they tell them some fear. Like, I'm never going to go to any of my friends and tell them, man, you know what, I just feel like such a loser, or I feel depressed, or I feel anxious. I mean, with men, I don't think that conversation rarely happens. But who am I going to go to take that conversation when I feel vulnerable? I'm going to go to my wife. So that emotional, stripping of everything else. And when that is there, and that, in other words, when that trust is fully established, then the intimate relationship can be that much more intensified and valued between them. And so anyway, so if you look at the core relationship as that intimate relationship, and if it's solid, it can lead to it's a solid base for everything else to be based on. But if that inner circle, that most intimate setting is weak, and there's problems, and there's some disjointed things going on in there, then it's going to have an effect definitely on the larger marriage as it is. I want to kind of talk to you about the issue of intimacy in Islam and that's why we asked this session to be only for married people. There is some, very, this is the talk that we never did, right? This is the talk that we never, and honestly, in our culture, as Muslims, we have a very difficult time talking about this. Why? Because we have hayat. We should, and most of us at least try our best to implement that in our lives, to be modest in how we make things, and to be respectful and honorable in how we talk, and so on and so forth. Even in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to the subject of man and woman, the language is very I don't know the right words to use, but it's very appropriate. Right? The words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are a little bit more unguarded, but the the Prophet ﷺ, when he speaks about this issue, he's frank very often, but of course it's within the realm of language that is not cruel or anything harm that talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he talks about the subject. The subject is discussed. So you know, and so that model is there in the Sunnah, but sometimes us as Muslims we have a difficult time bringing that out. As I'm studying and trying to talk about these things right now, right? Actually, it's funny at the school over here. I think in fifth grade they do a class on puberty, and then they do another one later in seventh grade. And usually they call me and all these Islamic study teachers are I'm the poor guy who gets the job. And then when they do it, it's funny. Some of the parents they come in and they sit with their boys. I'm talking to the boys. That's my wife to do the boys, and the parents are there, sitting like this. Because it's a difficult conversation, right? So the problem is this. The problem is we ignore our whole lives. Many of us. Actually, I'm thinking about my own life, and I don't know if I ever had that talk with my parents. And then I got married. And some of us have maybe a chaste upbringing, and some of us, unfortunately, we understood and we experienced things that we found things out the way we should have. Right? That's a problem. It's also a problem when we have a good, clean life before we get married, but no one ever told us anything. Then we get into that relationship, and we don't know some basic functions. In the Arab world, when I studied in Egypt, it's very interesting. I remember when sometimes we go and sit privately with the sheikh, and the sheikh he would, some of the students were younger, and when it would come time for their marriage, they would always talk on the side of this. There's one book that is circulated, like that's what the sheikh gives to a student, like 1 week before marriage, and gets him ready, gets him prepped, which is good, which is a good practice. But we have struggled, we've struggled to, I think, duplicate that practice. So the hadith of Sayyidina Jabir, radiallahu ta'ala, Sayyidina Jabir is one of the great Sahaba when it comes to the narration of hadith. And Sayyidina Jabir, radiallahu anhu, he got married when he was young. He got married probably when he was Allah ta'ala, a late teenager. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once when they were going back to Medina from an expedition, the Prophet ﷺ, he sees Jabir on his animal rushing quickly towards Medina. And he says, and the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Yeah, Jabir, I see you in a rush going to Medina. What's going on?" He said, "I just got married, Ya Rasulullah." And the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Jabir, he says, "A big here, some you." And he says, is the woman that you married, is she someone who was married previously, or is she a virgin? And Sayyidina Jabir, he says that she was somebody who was married previously. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says something that's very interesting. He says, why did you not marry a younger girl so that you could play with her, and that she could play with you, and that you could laugh with her, and that she could laugh with you?" And the Sahabi, he said, he said, "Ya Rasulullah," he said that my father, he died as a martyr, and I have, he left behind many daughters. I have all of these younger sisters, and I wanted to marry someone who's going to be able to take that to partly play a parental role as well as being my wife. And the Prophet told he was accepting of his decision. But the point that we want to take out here is that the Prophet he talked directly to Jabir, and some of the scholars, they say that the Prophet he took the responsibility, and this is beautiful. The Prophet he took the responsibility of trying to be a father figure role to Jabir, knowing that he lost his father. He lost his father at Uhud. And so the Prophet tries to play that role, and how is he advising him? He's looking at his life, even in terms of his intimate relationship, and who he thinks would be best for him. And so we find that one of the primary goals of marriage, as the Prophet ﷺ is telling us in this hadith, is that the two parties they will be able to find satisfaction with each other. They will be able to have a loving relationship where they can be, intimate partners with each other in a light way. Won't you play with your wife? Won't you laugh with her? And we also find that the story continues, and in another riwayah, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Why did you turn away from a young girl and her saliva?" It's an interesting expression the Prophet ﷺ made. And the ulama, they looked at that, they said that what that means is the Prophet ﷺ he is talking about actual foreplay, right? Why did you turn away from her and her saliva? Meaning that when your mouth mixes with her mouth, when your tongue mixes with her tongue, her saliva mixes with your saliva. It's talking about, what today they call French kissing or, that type of thing. And I see people blushing and so on and so forth, but that's the subject we're talking about here today, right? So why did you not, have somebody that you could do that with? And not negating that the person that he has would be that ability, but the point being that foreplay and being intimate with your wife, that is something the Prophet he was concerned with his companions and their core relationship with their wives in that regard. So Sayyidina Jabir, he continues, and the Prophet he tells him, he says, when we are about to get into the city, the Prophet he says, slow down and enter at night. And he tells him so that she who has not combed her hair may comb her hair, and she that has not shaved her private region, she may do that. Saying what? That men who have been away on travel for a long time, and now they're coming back and they want to be with their wife should be ready for them. Right? Their wife should be ready for them. And to the point, he is talking about how specifically they should be groomed and should be taken care of even in the private region. Right? Even in the private region, that to that extent the Prophet was encouraging that we have ourselves prepared for each other in that regard. So, what are some of the things? And then actually at the end of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he tells him that he says when you go to her, be Qais is somebody who's wise, who's smart, and be wise and be gentle. Be wise and gentle. Been away for a long time, come back. Be wise and gentle. So this is a beautiful hadith that's kind of comprehensive that talks about the Prophet ﷺ and how he had this conversation with some of his Sahaba. So what are some of the particulars when it comes to intimacy and things that we need to consider? There are some basics that we need to know. Men are very different than women. And what arouses a man sexually is different than what arouses a woman sexually. Most of us know that conceptually. The problem is usually in practice. Is it not? The woman is aroused through emotions, through being known that she's loved, by being caressed and told sweet things. The man is aroused like that. This is and that's it. The man is aroused at the slightest motion of physical movement or whatever that may be. So there are two very different systems, right? And the woman who does not understand the nature of man and the man who does not understand the nature of woman, they will leave each other short in that particular relationship. So it's important that some things are very clearly understood in that relationship. So we talked about foreplay. Foreplay, of course, is the relationship between the man and woman that they have before they get to the actual physical act of sexual intercourse itself. let's see. As we mentioned, the wife, the woman, um, needs to be prepared, needs to be ready, needs to be brought to a place where she will be able to enjoy that relationship. The relationship between husband and woman is a mutual relationship when it comes to the physical relationship. In other words, there's the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said that a man who comes to his wife, uh, and she refuses him, and he goes to bed angry, then what? The angels will curse her. And this is Sahih Hadith and Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Hadith has to be understood. People can look at it, men can look at it definitely and take a very uh, um, skewed understanding of what that means and only apply one aspect of it without looking at the bigger picture. And I've seen people do this, and I've seen that mentality, and it's a very damaging mentality for somebody to think that the woman's role is simply to, excuse my expression, to lay down and to as if this is as if her household chores. And again, excuse me for the expression, but I'm trying to make sure that there's people who need to hear this, that she's there to cook, clean, and to be there for her husband in that particular regard. And they point to this as that. That is a very that is an individual who's going to struggle in this relationship in marriage, and that is a woman who is not ever going to be fulfilled in that intimate relationship. So the foreplay is something that is crucial for particularly the woman to have a full experience with her husband. And the Prophet ﷺ is related to have said in the hadith that's related by Ad-Daylami that one of you should not fulfill one's need from his wife, the sexual need, like an animal. Rather, there should be between them foreplay of kissing and moves. Another hadith of the Prophet said that a man should send to his wife a messenger before he approaches her, right? And that messenger being that there is this foreplay between them. The Prophet ﷺ, he was known, and by the way, I'm not going to really talk about the specifics of all of these but just to give some general guidelines. There is a lot of research out there for those who need to know. You can simply look things up, but there are certain core concepts that we should walk away with today. The Prophet ﷺ, see, and then the intimate relationship between husband and wife is not only at the moment. It's not only leading up to the moment. You all understand what I mean by that. I'm trying to talk in a shielded manner as possible. So it's not only at the moment of when two people are coming together to be intimate, but it's an overall feeling in the marriage itself, right? It's an overall feeling in the marriage itself. Because if it's only, one strives to have foreplay with his wife, only leading up to that, there is a psychological trigger that can go off to that can also be negative. That it's only when we do this, but the rest of our life, on our daily life, 24/7, every day of the week, maybe the two people that get together once every couple of weeks or whatever it is, there's none of that. That wasn't the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you understand what I mean by that? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he used to leave his house, he used to kiss his wife. When he used to just go to Salah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house is right here in the Masjid al-Sharif. So as he said, that to me is Allah Akbar. That to me, see, this is a case today of where men got the short end of the stick. Men, we had to sit here and listen that we can only one task at a time. And men get the short end of the stick when it comes to the actual time. But alhamdulillah, sometimes we need to get short end of the stick. And I can say so, what was I saying? So the Prophet says, his house is right here, right? He just steps in the masjid. But, what does that mean? What does that mean? The sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a sensual person. He was a passionate person. He displayed his affection even, of course, the hadith you all familiar with, Sayyidah Aisha, she's watching the Ethiopians are dancing in the masjid, and she's watching it, and she's like leaning against the Prophet. Right? The Prophet, I mean, he had this type of public displays of devotion are not necessarily a bad thing in Islam. I think it's come to a point where we as Muslims we try to, we step into the masjid boundaries, and then if you're holding up before that place upon it, this and that. When you go to the movies, maybe you do that. I mean, yes, there are certain parameters, and we have to be cognizant of how others, they look at you and this and that. But at the same time, that coldness in a relationship over time is to be managed, right? So we have to have this, not only when it's leading up to the ultimate intimate relationship, but even the overall whole relationship where husband and wife just are just eating with each other. As the Prophet said, they laugh together, they play together, and they have that light type of relationship with one another. When it comes, it's interesting. Somebody said it very interestingly. They said that as far as foreplay is concerned, they said a man's arousal is like a microwave. Turn it on, flip the switch. A woman's arousal, on the other hand, is like an oven. It takes time, and that, if there's anything that one needs to understand, and honestly, like we said before, people are not prepped for this. So when people get married, there's a lot of people who have issues when they first get married. First night of marriage, there are a lot of problems because if the young man and the young woman are not prepped before, the young man might have the expectation like that tonight's it, and I've been waiting my whole life for this. That the sister, she may be very timid, and maybe she's never been touched by that her whole life. The first night of marriage does not have to be the night when marriage is consummated. I mean, if you think about this. Like subhanAllah, in this society, even in the dating system and all of that, sorry for my expression, but a woman is seen as someone who's weak if it happened on the first night. I'm talking about this system as but the normal system that is not the Islamic system, the normal system here in this society is that you date someone and you let them slowly approach you more and more. First they touch, and then they kiss, and then they, and so on and so on. And that's how it develops, and it takes time. In Islam, when somebody gets married, at that first night of marriage, that doesn't have to be the time when everything happens. It may, if it's good and it's natural for the couple and so on and so forth. But the point is, it's something that should be developed. Let's talk about real quickly, because the time is short, and I'm going to try to squeeze as much as I can. So, in terms of what happens when there is not this compatibility between two individuals in the bedroom, there can be a lot of sexual dysfunction that can also lead to other problems in the marriage. So you have things like, for example, anxiety. You have like inhibited sexual response where one party is not able to respond. There is insufficient or ineffective sexual stimulation that takes place. There is even something that is called it's called the vaginavus. It is something that happens with married women. It's something that happens with married women where the woman is unable to become pregnant because of the negative reactions that she has towards sex. In other words, she has, for whatever reason, their sexual relationship is not right, and I don't understand the biophysical, psychological aspects of it, as Dr. Marwa can probably explain, but for whatever reason, those inhibited feelings that she has will actually impact her ability to become pregnant because the sexual relationship is not right. That's how powerful it can be. Impotence, and a woman being unable to respond during intercourse, and all of these things. Many Muslim couples they suffer in silence when there is sexual dysfunction between the two of them because they are told, well, then what happens in the bedroom should not leave that bedroom, which is true. That setting is not to be shared with anyone else. Like what happens between man and woman is sacred, is special, and should not be shared with someone else. But when it comes to a point where it leads to extreme frustration on one party or the other, and that will snowball into other parts of their marriage, then people should seek help. Okay, and that help, it may need to be professional help, but somebody needs at that point, if they are not able to deal with that themselves, there needs to be another layer. So we're not talking about going, talking to their friends and just casually. No, but there should be another level of intervention. Let's see. The relationship between husband and wife. This is, and I didn't even talk about the general philosophy of sex in Islam. That Islam is always in the middle. In Islam, and I'll say this: everything is allowed between husband and wife. In the intimate setting between man and woman, everything is allowed between husband and wife. Of course, except a couple of things that a woman cannot be approached from her anus, that a woman should not, she should not be entered into a vagina during her menses. Those things are, untouchable. But everything else, even for a woman to see, for a man to see his wife's body and vice versa, for there to be foreplay, for there to be, there is a debate between the scholars on the issue of oral sex. But even for that, and I've seen this debated out between scholars, I've actually seen them debated out. And the end of that debate is always the same. There is nothing in Islam that forbids explicitly a man and woman from engaging in other type of activities, that are sexually related. That is what brings pleasure. So those are some general parameters and just some general advices. The subject really actually needs a lot more time for it to be developed into something that would mean a lot more. But I think what we can generally take is that relationship is of utmost importance to the whole relationship. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to fulfill our roles as intimate partners with our spouses. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that which benefits us and to benefit from what we learn. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 1,000 questions in 5 minutes. So previously.
So in the meantime, while we, mashallah, there's a lot of questions that you guys have. And inshallah, what I'm hoping is that maybe 10 of you have the same question, 10 more have the same question, so inshallah we can break it down into a few. A suggestion that obviously we won't be able to go through all, we'll try to go through most. But if in case your questions are not answered and they are important questions, would it be safe to suggest that they are welcome to make an appointment either with you or with marriage and family therapist so that their questions would be answered?
Absolutely. The only issue with that is it's difficult because people will have a more difficult time coming forward when you're known as opposed to anonymously, which is this setting. So I don't know if there's another way we can handle this that people can really have any suggestions perhaps. But email is always a good way to do as well. But feel free to step forward. And it's important because I'm already seeing the questions that are coming. They're real questions. So I'll just take this one for example. I feel a total disconnect between intimacy and the rest of my marriage. There is no affection, kind words, warmth, or any other way to make me feel like his wife. Is that okay? No, that is not okay. Perhaps there are other things going on in the marriage, but a woman should feel loved. That is our teaching. That is the purpose of marriage for intimacy, for I don't want to say it's not okay. I mean, it means that there is room for improvement. Okay, there is room for improvement. Some men don't have the full capacity to um, to live up to their wife's expectations, or and there's always someone has expectation of this, someone has they don't always match up. So we don't want to discount the brother's end of things too. He has a history, he has a past. He saw what he saw in his own family and how his father treated his mother, and that relates to how he deals with it. So there has to be, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this, but communication during intimacy is very important. During intimacy itself is important. A man should know what his wife likes, and the wife should know what his husband likes in terms of what pleases them sexually. That yes, you can talk about that. There is no modesty in not talking about that. In other words, sometimes this is Islam doesn't look at sex as a shameful act. Islam looks as an act where the husband and woman are rewarded in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet said, "Inna fi bud'i ahadikum sadaqah," that verily in your private parts, in other words, your sexual relationship with your spouse, there is reward for that. The Sahaba, they're amazed. They say, "Ya Rasulullah, in that situation," he says, "don't you see if you placed it in a place other than that, you did haram?" And he goes, "People running around sleeping with other people, aren't you going to be punished for that?" "Yes, Ya Rasulullah, therefore you're rewarded." So the Islamic view of sex is a positive view, is a one that we're encouraged to learn, to experience, to try, to experiment. All of that's encouraged in Islam. So we shouldn't feel shy and inhibited to talk to our most closest partner about those things. Like I said, during intimacy itself, after it, this didn't work, and to figure things out. But if you don't talk about that, never your spouse cannot read your mind, right? So we have to. There is nothing wrong. You're not seen as less in the sight of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Because you're talking about these matters, because you're talking about sex. It's not seen as something in any negative way. In fact, the opposite should be done. Um, is it sunnah for men to also groom themselves physically, private area, armpit? Yes, absolutely. This is called from Sunnah al-Fitra, that the Prophet he advised us to keep ourselves well manicured. In Hadith, the Prophet said, and these are things that we learn from our grandfathers, saying that to cut the nails, to shave the underarms, to shave the private area, and so on. It should be done. It should be done once every 40 days at least. So in other words, one should be well groomed, and excuse me, I'm so sorry. That should lead, and that will lead, inshallah, to a more pleasurable experience. When people go into the bed, people should smell good, people should look good. Women want to wear lingerie, and their husband like for them to wear that. They should encourage them, they should buy it for them. Anything that is done to enhance that relationship can and should be done. Can and should be done. A woman and husband are allowed to look at each other. The actual act of intimacy should take place under a sheet. Should take place under a sheet. The Prophet said it shouldn't take out without open. I'm saying the privacy of their own bedroom should be under a sheet. But other than that, for them to look at each other and so on and so forth, there is no issue there. And one should be groomed and one should smell good. If the Prophet said, "Come to Jum'ah and take a shower," where there's thousands of people you don't even know, and what about your own wife or your own husband? Sorry? It is the only issue somebody has to put down. Sure. Um, so I'm conflicted as to what I should answer and what I shouldn't. But very briefly, because it's a lack of time to talk about it, but the Prophet he allowed withdrawal. He allowed for a man to prematurely pull out so that the man's sperm will not enter into his wife. Um, so, and the scholars extracted from that birth control is allowed. Generally, the general principle that birth control is an allowable practice. Uh, Permanent birth control, in other words, someone's tubes to be tied on the woman's side or on the man's side. The sex for men, I don't know what it's called for women. That is not allowed unless there is a pressing medical reason. In other words, if she can get pregnant, could lead to her negative health or something like that. So that in a quick nutshell. What is not allowed in Ramadan in regards to intimacy? In Ramadan, of course, we're allowed to have intimate relationships with our spouse in the evening after sunset or something before dawn. Other than that, yes, you're allowed to kiss your wife. Well, there's of course a famous situation that happened where the man came to the Prophet and he asked him, Ya Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife during the day of Ramadan? The Prophet says no. Another man comes and he says, Ya Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife during the day of Ramadan? The Prophet says yes. Rasulullah, two different people, he told two different answers for the same question. He said, yeah, the one was a young boy who just got married, and if he kisses her, it's going to lead to on and on and on. And the other one is an old man, he's been married a long time, he kisses his wife and he's fine. It's cool, nothing's going to happen, right? So one has to know their limits and one has to know their, if it's going to lead to something further, then obviously one should curb so that it doesn't take the next step. But yes, just a minimal amount of displays of affection is okay. This is a very difficult question. If a wife feels that the holy matrimony has been violated by an extramarital affair, how does she recover trust? How does she soundly reconcile betrayal to her and herself, respectively speaking, with person who subconcept? This is a very difficult question. I don't think necessarily have a one size fits all answer. There are those marriages that recover from that, and there are those marriages that cannot. Quite simply put, there are certain marriages that can recover from that violation of trust, and there are certain marriages that cannot. Definitely, if one is not able to cope and deal with that, figure it out with the husband.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So we're gonna response. Apologize. My wife actually had that's the question. The time right now is as it always does. Amazing dialogue. We're gonna just hold also for a couple of minutes. Usually we pray five the whole thing for us. So we're gonna make our way downstairs. Tell us for the men and women to so we can pray upstairs. If you like more, you're welcome to come downstairs. Whatever is easier. And then we resume at 5:30. Correct. Then we resume at 5:30.
All of us, not doing anything. Well, I mean, they're going to prayer right now. But I mean, they're going to prayer right now. She basically that's what I'm saying. She might be coming back. She's like, here, up here. You can go into the side room. They're going to start in about 1 minute. Yeah. I want to talk to her also. That's what I'm looking for. But you can have my email. I don't know what contact she gives up to the public versus CHAN.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
People still have to do the light stream, shoulder, filling the gaps, fuels on the red light. rules of the life. It's really turn off your cell phones. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We apologize for the mic. Perhaps frustrated, I'm not sure what happened. Also want to apologize to the local community members, inshallah, who are here. Our salah times are set every time, and fortunately sometimes when we have a big crowd and the time in the program. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put those extra few moments that you're waiting for the salah in your bank as if you were praying salah. And that's the words of the Prophet, the one who's waiting for salah as if he's in salah. We're going to resume the marriage session because there were a bunch of questions that were delicate questions that went unanswered. We're going to resume that upstairs just for 15 minutes, question and answers for married people, because there were some very specific questions. And then 5:30 starts the next session upstairs, insha'Allah ta'ala. Also for our single participants, for that session, Sheikh Fatih is on the side row, also able to answer any further questions. He's there with you as well. Inshallah, a lot of dialogue, so please take advantage of these precious few minutes.
Most people would feel uncomfortable asking that out loud, whereas when you learn these people, it makes them feel more comfortable to actually ask them. So I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but I want to actually say that it's more of a confidence. I think for the sake, I would just give it to him as one of the questions, just because you're the only one. So I don't want it to be like. You could just say, "Sister had a comment on the importance of." I can just remember. Is that what you want to say? Yeah. She knows that talking. What does that mean? Will she understand what that means? Oh, okay. Oh, can you clarify that then? Can you just say, can you find it? Okay. I mean, hold on. Yeah. I'm gonna leave. It's here. Yes, I'm so sorry. It's just like with this, and I'm graduating all the stuff. And it's not. You keep counting me down for that. I'm really sorry, but I'm I want to I won't be here in the summer.
Assalamu alaikum. If you could please take a seat, inshallah, we will continue for 10 more minutes with Q&A. Inshallah, for 5 minutes, we will go with more instance-related questions, and and then after that, for 5 minutes, we'll go with other questions. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, we're sorry, there's a lot, but Allah, we will get your questions. So, Chef, we'll start.
A couple of quick questions that we want to get to. I have a healthy marriage, but with my wife, but when it comes to intimacy, I don't feel very driven. Is that an issue? No, it's not necessarily an issue. Our physical makeup is our physical makeup. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created different people with different, quite honestly, and we still marry people, you're right, still with different sex drives. I mean, some people have, some men, if they do, if, you know, if they don't have it once a day, if they don't have sexual intercourse once a day, that they are not, you know, they're not getting the fulfillment. And others, it may be a much larger gap. And women, similarly, perhaps. So that's not an issue in and of itself, but how you work that out with your wife is important. In other words, for those things that we discussed, well, look, this just doesn't, I don't as much, and how do you come to a compromise? Because the other party can feel very compromised, can become very frustrated, can become very resentful, and so on. So, is it an issue itself? No. In and of itself, no. But does it need to be worked out with your partner? Yes, because it's not about you alone. It's about both of you, right? So that's very important. The other issue I wanted to mention that was briefly that I just gave quick reference to before the prayer was about the issue of oral sex. as I mentioned, that there are some ulama who spoke out against it and said it's not appropriate, it's just that they don't have, there is not a solid evidence that they have. So if you take that it's okay and it's acceptable, that's one thing, that's the fiqh standpoint of it. But the other part of it is how that plays into a relationship between husband and wife. Both should be willing, both should be support, because in other words, you can't take that opinion and then just want to, do certain things, and the other party is not comfortable with that. It should be a level of comfortability between both for that to be achieved and for that to have a desired result amongst the couple. That is one. Another, this is a good question. What happens to a man if he refuses his woman? Does he get cursed from angels? Right? This is a good question. We read in the hadith earlier, certain reality. There is no particular text on that. The text speaks about women. Can you take that and transpose it upon the men? I don't know. Will the angels be happy? They won't be happy. Will they be cursing the men? I don't know. Okay. But definitely the point is that why did the Prophet make that statement? What is the meaning of that statement? Don't take the text of it and look at it stripped of any context. The context of it is what? Is that Islam is very, very, very particular about the sanctity of marriage, setting up certain boundaries and parameters and ways and methods for it to be ensured that only a husband and wife have that relationship with one another. In other words, the concept of khalwa, of a man and woman being alone, and shaitan is a third party amongst them if they're not related. And other concepts about how the Prophet he said, yes, you're allowed the first look, but you're not allowed the second look. In other words, when it comes to looking at the opposite sex, and all of these things, the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La taqrabu zina. Don't come close to zina. Don't do anything that's going to take you down that path. So those are the general parameters. And when it comes to a woman and a man and desiring from his wife, if he's holding himself and he does have a strong sex drive, and he perhaps has a stronger sex drive than her, and maybe has a stronger sex drive than other men, and he's withheld, at the end of the day, it leads to frustration, it can lead to resentment and these other things, as we mentioned. And this is the context of the hadith, and it's not a statement of that the man should not be conscious of his woman and her state of achievement, that she's tired, that she's done for the day because of the children. I know this happens in my household, and I imagine it happens in a lot of other of your households. Is that my wife, when I come home at the end of the day, she's got that. The kids, they go over to the ground, and she fell asleep in the bed with them, and I'm just walking in the door. I'm hungry, want to eat something and this and that. And I had a long day too. But the reality is, so it's a mutual relationship where both parties have to be very cognizant of what's going on with the other individual. No, it's not marriage. It's just two people just coming together and just, having certain needs and wants from each other. Because marriage is much, much, much more than that.
For that. And I think we will now continue to other questions with Dr. Paul.
So we selected these two questions because it enables me to finish some of my talk. But not that the other questions were important. They were very important, but probably this is not a platform to address very deep questions in 1 minute, because sometimes the person might misunderstand. So the first one is there any example of successful anger management counseling? Obviously, the answer to that is yes. But I do want to say two things. When we think about anger tendencies, we have to think about two potential answers to this. First of all, is it something that's changeable or it's not? For example, is this something that's a genetic tendency where someone just might be to have anger tendencies or a hormonal issue, or even had a very troubled childhood, someone that had sexually abused, someone that was abused by their father, someone that didn't have a father? Believe it or not, what happens during your childhood can actually lower your sensitivity to stress. So what you and I would be like, you're freaking out because I said this or I looked at this this way. We have different levels of sensitivity to stress. If it's these two cases, then it is something that, yes, it might be not changeable, but it doesn't mean we can't find ways to dance around it, but not within it. So there has to be the wisdom to distinguish this from something that is changeable. Now, something that is changeable, then maybe there's a crisis that hopefully, inshallah, will end. Maybe it's abused. All of this, obviously, there are definitive answers for. The other question here that I really like is, and for a couple or spouse who just realized, I'm going to read the essence of the question. Is basically a couple got married, they've been married for a long time. They weren't religious, but one of the partners decided to become more religious. The female decided to become more religious, and this is a story that I am sure that happens a lot. You know, I was in a halaqah once, and that lady was saying that she was wearing a hijab, and it was the major shattering thing in her marriage. People get upset. You know, someone might come and say, I have a problem, my husband is addicted to alcohol. Was he addicted to alcohol before the marriage? Yes. What made you think he was going to change? If you have the ability to cure him from addiction, you should be an addiction therapist. And if you were an addiction therapist, you can't marry your client. So you can't change anybody. Okay? Now with that, obviously this person is changing for the better. Okay? Now Allah is going to test us in many things. How is testing your marriage any different than testing you with a sick child? So there aren't always going to be answers. There's going to be some tests. And maybe for this person, their test is their marriage. But with that, the academic, pragmatic answer to this would be, you changed on him, even though you changed for the better. And he does have the right to remain not as good if he wants to, because that's how you both started. That would be the logical answer. But obviously that's not the better answer. Because maybe the less logical answer is obviously you're becoming more religious, you're becoming closer to Allah, you continue on that path, and whatever you can handle from the struggle of being in this marriage, from maybe abuse from him, then it's up to you how much you take from this, and may Allah reward you for that, and maybe I can get help here on that. Obviously, I don't condone any kind of physical abuse, because with that, I don't even see clients where there's physical abuse, so obviously if there's any physical abuse, completely not acceptable. But it's up to you how much you want to take from this struggle as a part of your thawab or deciding to wear the hijab. But this brings another characteristic that I think we talk about, and that it's so much more important to share a value system than an interest system. So people who are married for a very long time find each other interesting, but don't necessarily have the same interests. Okay? But what they do have in common is a value system. Again, this does not come from an Islamic research. Any kind of couple that have the same value orientation, their marriage is strong. So I really, you know, you don't have to take a baking class together, where you don't want to take this class with me, that means you don't love me, we don't like the same thing, but it's having a value system that really matters. Sign up for maybe doing a halaqah at your house. And you know, you're arguing, it's very difficult to argue if there's a halaqah coming to your house. One of you guys will have to be like, well, there's a halaqah coming. I'm just going to talk to you because it's inconsistent with the fact that we're having a halaqah. But I can't emphasize how having a value system is really, really important for a marriage. And this happens all the time when one person decides to embellish and improve their value system, becoming more religious, and the other person doesn't want to. It's something that is very serious, and the person will have to just qada and qadar. That's their test. Their marriage is their test. What would they have done if their child was sick? This is not something we plan for. And decide how much does she want to struggle this out as she is gathering salam. You know, not sure if you want to shed any light on that. So these are the two questions I picked. I didn't think the other ones I could answer very quickly. So sorry about that.
So I think because of time, I'm sorry, I think because of time, we have to cut this session because the other session is scheduled to start. But we will have time in that talk show to ask more questions. Even though we already, this session was only supposed to go on until 5 o'clock. So we already extended the time, so inshallah we will just have to end at this time. We will have just a couple minutes, I guess, lot of times, I'm sorry, we can't. But basically, people are just gonna come up right now. From downstairs, everybody from the singles workshop, everybody from the divorce workshop, and then probably we're going to have, the next speakers up for the talk show. So as Russell said, Chef Sahel, Dr. Marwa, and, thank you all. Inshallah, it was all, beneficial for all of us.
I'm gonna say something. This meeting between time while we're coming up. First of all, I just want to thank a few people because they're not gonna step forward and thank
I changed the
themselves. Whoever they can thank people, and he doesn't thank Allah. So first of all, I thank Sister Diana. This was her concept. Diana was just here. This day, she's the one who had the idea, and it all came with it. And she just wanted to do something, and like everybody got excited and wanted to do it. Definitely. And then we want to thank all of the volunteers, and I'm not going to start mentioning them because I don't want anybody to be left out. But everybody who was here today, they've been stressing out for the last 3 weeks. And before those 3 weeks, there was a lot of planning and talking and going on. And these last 3 weeks have been intensified. So for them to make the arrangements, the physical arrangements, the logistics, to bring all the mics and to figure everything out, and they live streamed it, and the food and the program of this particular day was amazing. It was awesome. To get the sister to do the video and to get to do the skit and all of those things, there was a lot of thought put into it. Bless them in their future marriages as well. So, and in terms of the questions that were not able to be fielded, there's some of the speakers that are here today, folks are individually just standing around. And then, this is an ongoing dialogue. We just started the dialogue today. This is something that's going to keep going and going and going. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to figure out for all of us as a community, for us as individuals in our own relationships. So we hope that this at least brought the level of consciousness up about the importance of the institution of marriage in our community. We're going to start the next session, so I'm going to close my mouth.
Just so you guys know what we're doing right now, we are trying to make a big announcement for everybody outside, all the singles and divorced, people who want the singles and divorced sessions, to come inside now. So once we get them inside, we'll proceed with our next session, which will hopefully be next Tuesday.
I think let's just start.
Just wait there. Can you let them know the middle is
Okay.
the least?
So just one announcement while we're waiting. So the left side of the hall is for the brothers, the right side is for the sisters, and the middle is for the family. Now we understand that there is a very large amount of sisters here, so the sisters come into this side right here. You guys can see this side of the family's area, that's fine. But this side right here on the left is specifically reserved for families. So please, any family here.
Ladies and gentlemen, our last session is about to begin in just a few moments. Please make your way upstairs to the upstairs Musalla for the rest of the marriage seminar. Once again, the last part of our marriage seminar is about to begin in just a few moments. So please make your way upstairs to the Musalla in the masjid. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. This was the recording from the single session.
I think that's this.
Where's the end? Oh, up there.
This is
You were so I don't know. She gave me this to record. Oh, maybe this is one. Sorry.
More announcements.
What?
More announcements.
Oh, yeah, and say we're gonna start anything.
Once again, this is the last reminder for anyone who is standing outside to come in for the last workshop. Remember, this is the last workshop, so please make your way upstairs to the masjid. Also, there is no food or drinks allowed in the masjid area where the seminar is happening. Only bottled water. No food or drinks except bottled water is allowed. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Me? You guys made it. You guys made it.
That's all I do, guys. Everyone's like such good feedback. So alhamdulillah. I'm sure we can next year. Like I already have like I can't wait till tomorrow next year's. I already have ideas. Who's moderating this one? You? Can I sit right here?
There's 2 minutes. Where is it?
يا مواد رايحة.
My name is Maisa. Inshallah, I'll be the host for tonight's talk show. Inshallah, we've had a lot of sessions throughout the day that covered various topics. And mashallah, the last session being specific to, the single, the married, the divorced, and so forth. So I'm glad to see that we've all come together now. I mean, we have a lot of problems to talk about, but now let's talk about solutions. It's too much. We don't want to dwell on the problems. Alhamdulillah, we have plenty. But now definitely the focus of tonight, of this session, is to go over the solution and still address the more questions that you have. So, inshallah, we can have every speaker kind of talk a few minutes about the next steps after spending a day of going through all the different topics of marriage. What are some of the recommendations or suggestions of next steps moving forward? In addition, mashallah, the coordinators of this event opened up questions on, I think it was like a private text to cell phone line that people could have submitted their questions privately and anonymously through the Facebook event page, and they summarized all those questions together. So I'll be going back and forth through these questions that you submitted online and have our different issues and leaders answer your questions, inshallah, that I have written here. And if there's time at the end, we'll open it up, inshallah. If not, at least we'll have time to speak to all these people afterwards, inshallah. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with Sheikh Jamal, inshallah, to kind of give us a little intro and to give us his next steps, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. How many people were at Juma yesterday and I see one? alhamdulillah, so you already know half of where I'm going, inshallah. Basically, I would look at this from two angles. The first is the theoretical side, and the second is the practical side. And even the theoretical has practical. At least mine is fine. The theory is basically that there's two elements in any situation at any time for every single Muslim. And those two elements are knowledge and spirituality. Really important. Meaning that both of these have to come together. The first thing is if we're ignorant at any level, ignorant of what Allah wants from us in a relationship, ignorant of how we're supposed to go about doing it, ignorant of how we're supposed to maintain it, ignorant of how it can happen on a practical level, any level of ignorance, first of all, has to be addressed and continuously addressed. As we all grow and learn at different rates and in different circumstances and experiences. So the first side is the knowledge side. The second side is the spiritual development side. Why? Because even if we know, that doesn't mean that we're going to act. So this is where the purification of the heart comes in. That really we have to make this very serious effort to learn, which gives us a foundation and principles and understandings. And then the spiritual development helps us to build the capacity internally to act upon that knowledge. Without that, there's nothing that can actually be done. So I'll just talk. So this is one side. The second side is that what we should be thinking about as Muslims on a practical communal level is the question of institutions. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he comes to Medina, even in Mecca, there's institutions always from the beginning for any number of things. For school, for learning, for a lot of stuff. So what we are facing, in one of my opinions, is that one of the things we're facing is that with the modern development of society, and where things are progressing in that regard, and also with a largely immigrant and diverse community, some of the institutional structures that existed in societies to facilitate people getting married, and also to facilitate all of the understandings and questions around marriage, no longer exist. So whereas if you were born 60, 70 years ago in a village in some place, not to upset anyone, so I won't name it that place, so if you're born in that place, you grow up and you understand how you get married and you understand what the marriage is supposed to look like. Your family did it, everyone did it, and you also understand what to do if you have a problem. You talk to this relative, that relative, you go to the court if you need to, whatever it may be. Now, you take us into this environment where we lose all of that, cultural expectations, family ties, communal strength, all of these things are different in our context right now. And so one of the things that I would say that we need to think about on a solution side is what can we do institutionally in order to fill and facilitate fill the gaps that exist and facilitate the process of moving forward. And basically to just say that, well, the Islamic centers, they should be providing it, in my opinion, that's not enough. Alhamdulillah, for the most part, our Islamic centers are trying, but they're understaffed. Everyone needs to understand this is important. One of the brothers did a research on the likes of our community in ICUI. He said we need 4 to 6 imams for a community this size, ideally. Okay, so to say, okay, the imams and the administrations and stuff were all volunteers, may Allah reward them, to solve these problems is not necessarily realistic. So how can we have institutions, and how can we think about institutions as a community? This is what kifaya in the end of the day, it's a responsibility on all of us, to help to fulfill these needs. So that's not a solution, but it's a direction, inshallah, for any number of solutions. Second one.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, I'm very excited and happy that we actually had this long overdue forum or session or gathering. It shouldn't be the last one. Looking forward to having another one very, very soon. Instead of waiting for another 4 or 5 years, we should have these programs on a regular basis. Because our marriages deserve better than we're offering. And second, to Mount's point, that it's not only the responsibility of the institutions, because the institutions at the end of the day cater to the needs and the demands of the community members. The institutions are going to respond to you. So and our institutions at the end of the day are really made and maintained by the community. and the community has to be responsible. So there are many attempts, programs, that may have been lacking when it comes to planning, when it comes to advertising or marketing, right? So at the end of the day, it all depends on the community and the community's response. So Jazakumullah khairan for for coming, for taking an interest, for putting the time and the effort into our marriage. Where do we go from here? It's a step in the right direction. We, of course, to have, in my 15 years experience with dealing with those issues with my own personal life, community members, relatives, I found that there's a key component, and that is communication. And there are serious, breakdowns when it comes to communication. So, and everyone is saying that, it's not going to hurt if we learn, and if we continue to learn it, to develop and to strengthen our communication skills. We do it when it comes to our job and our profession. How is it that bodybuilders continue to work out, continue to learn new things, new techniques, and they continue to maintain, their fitness? Engineers, they do that. You always have to sharpen your tools. Doctors do that. You can never stop learning about your profession, and otherwise you're going to be, you'll be outdated, and people will just, pass you, and you will be. So therefore, we have to do the same thing when it comes to our marriages, and not take our marriages for granted. Because the fact of the matter is that we continue to grow. We either grow together or we grow apart from each other. And I think we need, as community centers and as institutions, to facilitate those activities and programs that will help couples maintain a strong relationship. Let me just conclude by saying that we very often focus on the structure, and we do not pay attention to the quality of the relationship. Right? So we're really keen on the structure and the roles and who's doing what, and very often it is at the expense of the quality of the relationship. So if we become quality oriented, if we start focusing on the quality of the relationship and the communication and the quality of the activities of the program, and make sure that each and everyone in the household is fulfilled, right? Including those who are facilitating or providing, let's say, child care. Very often, at various stages of the relationship, it becomes about, one unit or one component of the family, not everyone else, right? So in some marriages, when children come, parents neglect them, their relationship, they neglect each other, they neglect themselves, and soon they burn out, or they have nothing to offer to each other or to themselves, and it all becomes about making sure that the kids are fed and taken care of, and getting straight A's, and they neglect their relationship, and then what happens is the next falls apart. So I'm hoping, inshallah ta'ala, that we will continue holding these programs and these activities. I'm here to learn as much as anyone else.
Everyone. I feel very honored to be here, and again, I'm a student as well. SubhanAllah. I'm just going off of what Shafi just said about communication. That's so important. So I'm going to a different aspect, but basically, in terms of providing solutions, I think this type of forum is excellent. Why? Because it's kind of covering all of our bases. There's people that are desiring, that want to get married. And so at least we're talking about important things to look for. We're talking about qualities that are really important, intimacy, family, and spirituality. So that we go into looking for someone with these things in mind, whereas perhaps it wasn't in the forefront of our thoughts. For couples that are already married, we're talking about things that maybe you didn't think about before. Change, being interested in your spouse, looking at yourself first. That's something extremely important. If there's something wrong and you're not happy, this is shaitan. I'll tell you what happens. What happens? The finger goes the other direction. Their fault. I'm not happy because of you. SubhanAllah. And when we think about, well, where's my role in this? And honestly, a lot of times, SubhanAllah, it's about your relationship with Allah. When you feel like you're unhappy, you want to point it at everybody else. It's my job, it's my spouse, it's those kids. SubhanAllah, but when you look at yourself, you really get to enrich all of your relationships because you're working with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. Am I negligent in my prayers? Maybe my quality of my prayers is not good. I've done something to distance myself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we benefit, and of course, those that are widowed or divorced and gain some type of seminars, what happens then? We go home and we model for the next generation. And that is so key. And honestly, if we felt like there's a camera, like I was in the, just quickly in one of the rooms and I said something that wasn't really the best thing I would have said in public, but there were some other people around. And I said, okay, that wasn't a very positive parenting moment that I just had right now. But subhanAllah, if we felt like that with our spouses, with our families, and other people watching, your children or whoever else is in the household, that would put you to a higher standard. We already know also that was watching, but we forget, of course, to be on our best behavior. But to understand that my kids are learning how to live their lives. So if I make a mistake and I yell in front of them when I'm upset with my spouse, I forget about the things that when we're upset, it totally disrupts the security feeling of the children. Then I know that I'm messing up the next generation. But if I'm doing the positive things and I'm trying to stay focused on modeling even just how are you, conversation, a hug, a kiss, those things, when we understand that we're role modeling for the next generation, we've really taken marriage to really a next level. So those are just my few thoughts for now.
Assalamu alaikum. I have to be careful what I say because I can't just say anything. And I have my wife sitting right next to me. So, I think one of the things that we have to really take from today, because I think there's some concrete things that we can particularly do for ourselves. There's definitely some bigger communal issues we need to look at, institutional building, as Imam mentioned, and these other things. But perhaps in regards to today in particular, all of us, when we leave here, if we have the ability, some of us, people came from long distances to even come here because they saw the subject matter and they said, you know what, this is an important part of my life that I need to get right. Not that I have it wrong, but there's some people, mashallah, like they're sitting here like, I want to go to your house and learn how to be great. There's families in this room right now that I respect tremendously, that we have a lot to learn from. But when you're taking that ride home today, those who are coming from a long drive, and others who go home tonight or tomorrow, in the coming days, to have that conversation. If you're married, obviously you have a partner to have that discussion. If you're not, you find somebody else to have that discussion, or you have that discussion with yourself. A real discussion. What I mean by that is, you know what happens after events like this most of the time? What we go back home and we say, that was a good event. That's it. Yeah, that one speech, oh man, that's it. But what did we take? Yeah, we understood some things, but there's certain things you want to take them and you want to plant them in the soil and grow them, right? So that means you need to latch on to something that you feel, or you need to introspect and analyze your own life, and then take the time to water it and, foster it and grow it so that it can make something better in your life. Right? So the married couple, for example, I'm short on this. I'm falling short on this. If you have that conversation with your wife and you figure out what is something in particular that you can do to continue to take this forward to make your life that fuller life. The marriage is that roof under which everything else is going to work or not work. And if that roof has holes and cracks and it's exposed and it's falling apart, everything else that falls under that is under the shade of that roof is not going to be in the best of conditions.
Is an excellent way to start our program for today. So like I mentioned earlier, I have many questions that the community has submitted pertaining to either singles, married or divorced individuals. So I'm going to start off with a question for the singles. So mashallah, that seems to be quite a few of our young ladies and young men that are here today that are interested in finding that right one for them. So I'm going to start with some of the questions related to single individuals. And since I'm biased, I'm going to ask my sister first. So inshallah, here's the first question. There are many people in our community who engage in Islamic dating, or what they call Islamic dating, where they have a girlfriend, boyfriend whom they expect to marry in the future. They do not engage in sexual activity, but communicate freely and go out, etc. Usually they aren't fully ready financially or otherwise to get married, but will in the future. Is there a place for this in our deen, and is there a better alternative where one can get to know someone else?
So it's I think, really a loaded question, and it's extremely important. I think the key, what hit me from that question that was just asked, is we're getting to know each other, and we're kind of in communication, but we're not necessarily financially ready. It means you're kind of putting your toes in the water, and you know you're not going to be able to jump in, and that's very scary. It is, and it's basically that concept of like you're sharing your dreams together, you're excited about the future. Sometimes actually there was a couple that approached me a while back in the MSA, and they said, you know, we've been talking, we really like each other, we're very serious, we want to marry next summer, and both of our parents don't know. And I said, okay, well that's a problem. You know, what happens when, you know, kind of like what happened in this skit, but this was actually a nice ending. Alhamdulillah, in the skit. But what happens when one family is like, absolutely not, I'm going to kick you out of the home, blah, 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 or not yet, you have to get this degree, that degree, and the 10th degree, then you can get married. I mean, there's all kinds of issues. So why get, you know, emotionally attached to somebody when you don't really have an outlet? And there are unfortunate situations that, oh, we're not going to do anything, and because the emotions get high, the relationship deepens, and people fall into sin. And then what happens when you can't get married? It's a shame that you carry over your head and you can't look at that person as they are still a part of the community and you have to move on. So what I would say is that, you know, if you are going to talk to somebody and you do find out that they're not ready, you know, perhaps letting the families know it's something that can be worked out, you know, 1-2 years, or sometimes when you do let the parents know they are ready to financially support one side. But getting into this fantasy world of falling in love and just keeping it on hold for 2, 3, 4 years is very difficult. Just to keep that fun. I would really
Okay, don't go to buy frozen yogurt if you can't afford it. Just for the free sample. You know, if you go just to get the free sample, right, and then you know that you don't have the money, you can't afford it, you know, or you forgot your wallet, you're not ready to make a purchase. That's just very, it's not classy, but the least you can say, right? And I don't think it's appropriate, except that here we're dealing with someone's emotion. You know, it's not like you're dealing with someone's emotion, but so it's very troubling, you know, when we make a premature emotional investment, right? And then we find out that the other side is not ready to do it. It's very painful, detrimental. It could actually have very serious consequences in the future for people who are more experienced when it comes to this field. And I caution again, anyone getting involved at that level, we're not ready, or the other side is not ready. I just don't think the last thing you want to do is mess with someone's emotions.
So I want to push you guys further. I think most will agree that, of course, that yes, you shouldn't get into something emotionally damaging. But I would love to challenge one of you to kind of give a solution as to, so what do these young women and men, I still think that I'm semi-young, but what do we do when there are emotions? We do wish to be in a relationship, we're in college, we wish to be in a relationship, we know we're not ready, so what do we do? What do those young people do when their emotions are very real and they realize there's consequences, yet how do they stop with something that they're feeling from inside? I know it's tough, because we just want to say haram and halal and be done. But I think our youth really would love some answers that they can take away or some suggestions of what can they do to cope with some of these feelings. I don't know if that's the right word.
That's very valid. It's definitely for pushing. That is very valid. And I remember growing up and in the middle of public high school, everybody has a boyfriend, has going to prom, and you feel, well, what about me? I want that too. And so what happens, I think, without even really realizing it, and this is what I would really suggest for everyone to do, is to keep it, put all of your energy and your efforts into something fruitful. Honestly, like look at Michelle, all the people are the ones that organize this. I hope I'm not thinking anyone else. I think so. But that's fantastic. That's awesome. You're getting to know other people in the process, quite frankly. That may not be their intention, but you are getting to know other people in the process. You're putting all of your healthy energy into something that Allah will reward you in, and you're supporting one another. If you sit there and say, I have these feelings, and I'm just going to go in and talk to somebody, that's a very dangerous road you're traveling, and you don't know where that's going to end. The second thing is don't promote those feelings. I'm going to be very quiet. I'm going to be honest. Don't go to all of these love movies and watch things and get excited, whether it's emotionally or even, and I'm being very honest, I'm serious. And then you're like, oh, I wish I had a boyfriend, but I keep, watching all these movies where people go out, and why entice yourself into something that only Allah knows who, when, and where. Honestly, who, when, and where, you don't know. You could be putting yourself out there all the time, and you're kind of marketing yourself in a halal way, and you're waiting for that. And also, I'll just send you someone from left field, and I'll tell you my situation. So how Jisoo Mullah was from left field. But honestly, like completely, subhanallah, and I don't come to I'll say that to our So I would really, create positive work, volunteer, take extra classes, keep yourself busy that way, and don't put yourself in such I'm going to go out with these, some of my other college friends, we just go out in the group, it's no big deal. But you feel bad when you see somebody correcting somebody or doing this or what have you. And I'm being very honest. Don't put yourself in those situations. I had another thought, but maybe somebody else.
I'm going to add just a couple of things to that, because that is a super real scenario what we're talking about, and we find our young people in our community falling into this left and right. There's even been scenarios where people come to us and they say, well, can't you marry us under our parents' noses? And we want to do it right Islamically. They're good kids. They're believing Muslim kids. They want to live right Islamically, but the reality of their emotional connection with each other and of their own individual drives and their need for companionship and intimacy and all of that is so high that they don't know what to do, right? So I think there's something, there's a point here for parents in the room too, because there's much like married couples here that are parents, and I'm talking to myself and some of the others that I'm looking at, is that you have kids that are, when your kids turn 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, you need to have these conversations with them. Look, when the day comes, when you find somebody, the first person you come to is me. The first person that you come to is me. And obviously that entails something else, that you have a very good relationship with your children. And they're going to actually come to you, not just words, but you have to foster that so that they know they can come to you. And if you can't come to me, you need to go to Sheikh Jamal, or you need to go to such and such person if you feel that you're comfortable about talking about this matter. Because they need that resource to help figure things out. And if they don't have that first base to go to deal with those things, they're going to figure things out on their own. And usually when young people try to figure things out on their own, and there's no parameters except for those theories that they know in the back of their mind that are getting pushed off to the side because everything else is running so high, all of that goes to a wash, right? So that's part of the preparation of our kids for marriage, is that having those conversations with their kids and tell them, look, you're going to meet somebody someday, they're going to come out of left field, and come talk to me when that happens, and we'll figure it out.
Jazakallah khair. I think that I know there are some things I wanted to add. I'm just trying to figure them out. So I think as she mentioned something. One of the things I think is very important is honesty. And one of the things I would advise young people is to spend time with people who are older and wiser than you, because you're going to have a hard time honestly analyzing yourself without those kind of relationships. And so you need that kind of guidance in your life. All of us need that kind of guidance in our lives. So there are some honesty questions and there are some heart-related questions to go on the same model that I was using earlier. So knowledge-wise, it's very simple. How old am I? Can I afford? And is it a time when I should be getting married or not? If it's not a time when you should be getting married, close the door. That's it. Like there's really no reason to even go down the whole. Look, all of us understand. We're created. What does Allah say to Adam? You and your wife live in this garden. We're all wired this way. This is the way we're going to grow up. We're going to come of age. We're going to want to get married. That doesn't mean you just open the door and start talking to everyone and let the emotions run wild. Right? Is it a time when I should be doing this or not? If it's not, I'm closing the door. That's it. If it is, then okay, at least now we can start to think about what to do. Then you start to think about what to do, which also is related to the heart we talked about earlier. This thing in here is going to take whatever you put in. And if you make it bad, it's going to take a lot of bad things. And if you make it good, at least it's going to stop when it's in the face of something bad. But whatever you put in there is going to be there. So, like she said about music, films and like all the TV shows, yes, this is on the garbage scale. It's pretty high. But music, to be honest, music is extremely high on the garbage scale, especially if you're listening to stuff that's on the radio, regardless of the halal haram discussion in the first place, right? Because I'm sure people are going to listen to music regardless of that anyways, a lot of people. So, if you're listening to what's on the radio, you're destroying your heart and your mind because you're filling it with a bunch of nonsense. Another thing that's on the garbage scale is Tumblr. So, seriously, I've had multiple experiments now with Tumblr. When I was on, everyone is talking about love on Tumblr. I don't understand why it's the space for this discussion, but it's all about literature and great quotes and love. So if that's what you're reading all day long, that's what you're feeding to your heart all day long. It's going to have consequences, right? So I think these are some of the things to consider. How do you go about doing it? We talked about that in other sessions, and I think other people addressed it as well.
I have one more question about the singles, and we'll move around. For Sheikh Hafiz, someone asked, I'm told to make a istikhara about a potential spouse. What does salatul istikhara do? Am I supposed to experience something or something out of the ordinary? How do I know if the person is right for me based on this istikhara?
So I think that's a very good question. What are you supposed to experience? Ease, comfort, serenity. If the process goes smoothly, and things are working out, and you're not feeling something, you're comfortable with the whole process, then inshallah that's a sign from Allah. Some people think, and I think it's more cultural than anything, that they have to have some kind of supernatural event take place, or they have to basically see some divine, sign. An angel has to come, or they have to see a dream, or something like that. And in fact, subhanAllah, there was one case where a good, promising, marriage proposal was called off simply because no one saw a dream. Like the girl didn't see a dream, the boy didn't see a dream, her parents, the grandparents, the neighbors, nobody saw anything. They asked everyone, no one saw a dream, so they called it off. They thought that it was a requirement. There isn't even a statement from any scholar regarding that you have to see a dream once you make istikhara. Two signs. two things you look for. You basically, you make this istikhara and you proceed. If things work out and you feel comfortable and everything is easy, alhamdulillah. If things get very complicated or you're not feeling, you know, you have this bad gut feeling, right? And things are getting very complicated, you walk away from it. Just as simple as that.
This next question is for under the married category for Sheikh Sahel, being a counselor. In Orange County, couples are required to go through premarital counseling. Can the in-laws also go through in-law counseling?
The problem is, the question is flawed from a couple of angles. Number one, there was talk of trying to make premarital counseling a prerequisite for marriages that are conducted at the three masajid that you see represented here, Garden Grove, Masjid Umar al-Faruq, and Masjid Irvine. And, you know, we need to continue that dialogue and we need to do something on that end. Because the reality of premarital counseling is so important. Is so important. I've seen marriages fall apart for the silliest of reasons. And those reasons would have never come about if those people simply engaged in certain conversations, talked about certain subject matters, understood some things and understood those things very well, and that certain things that in one individual or the other not going to change, or are, you know, whatever it is, that would just make that marriage be doomed. And sure enough, I mean, within a week, it seems, because of simple things that weren't discussed, the marriages have fall apart. So I think we need to definitely look at that. And you know, there are certain other religious communities where they require people to go through 6 months of counseling before they can get married, because they realize the importance of marriage as an institution. And sometimes Muslims, they take the matter extremely lightly. They'll literally knock on the door, we're ready to get married now. We don't even know who you are, what you're about. There's something fishy about the whole situation. So those things need to be explored because we want to make sure that marriages are going to be successful. Right? That's number one. The second part about should there be in-law counseling, that's assuming that in-laws, that's almost making a statement that in-laws in and of themselves are problematic. And I don't see the matter as such. But I see definitely the fact that families should get to know each other. Right? If we are concerned about the other party and the other family, take the time to get to know them. You know, every imam, when he gives the marriage khutbah, he'll say that marriage is, and I said this earlier today in some session or another, that marriage is not only between two individuals, but it's between the bigger two families. Right? We always say that. So those two families should have a little bit of experience dealing with each other beforehand too, and to see what are the realities of and the expectations, the understandings, the way the other family, the way their minds work, and so on and so forth. Because 9 times out of 10, you find whatever things that came about in the engagement or the getting to know each other process, some concerns, some hints towards this and that. 9 times out of 10, you see that, you know, increase. You see that manifest in the marriage, right? So it's important that you look at that you get to know people and so on and so forth. And maybe for the in-law counseling, we'll set up to shift inshallah.
It's funny you said that because now I can plug in this. We're planning, inshallah ta'ala, on the weekend after Memorial Day, I believe. It is same weekend. Yeah. May 25th, we have a session on how to be an outstanding in-law. Right? So it's geared towards, especially whether you're already, your child's married and you have, you know, or you want to become an in-law of someone. You know, because sometimes, you know, many couples have issues, or many individuals, one of the reasons they're not getting married, or it's not because the requirements of some families. For instance, I'll give you, today somebody was telling me that how they were talking to someone who was looking to get it. It's a matrimonial service. They were talking to the individual. They were showing them, pictures of prospects, and the person consulted with the father, and then turned back and said, "No." So why? What issues do you have? My father said that. This is the guy saying his father said that. Why? Look too dark. But you're darker. Yeah, but darker than what we have. The paper bag test. So that's the mentality, right? So now he may be attractive, he may be fine with that individual, but the father has standards, right? Of course, the mother wasn't there. That would have been awkward. But so the father is like, telling his son what to. So many, with due respect to our parents in that generation, and we're soon to be in that generation, part of that generation, right? Right? We need also to know. We need to know what it is like, or how we can, inshallah, become a positive force in this process and not become a hurdle or become a challenge to our children who are just trying to do what is right and fulfill the requirements of their deen and achieve, get the other half of their deen taken care of. It's difficult as is for them, and we're making it even more complicated, more difficult for them. So inshallah, I urge everyone inshallah to join us for that session May 25th, inshallah, how to be an outstanding in-law.
Mashallah, that's an awesome idea for that seminar. And I do want to say that it's joked about a lot, but honestly, from speaking with individuals, you do understand there is some basic type of aspect of human nature. I think that gets involved with in-laws. In terms of the way that the mother feels about the son or about her daughter. So you tend to see that your child is right, and so that the other automatically that daughter-in-law or son-in-law becomes the other, and it's a little bit foreign. These people, husband and wife, okay, they already live together, they get along, and what happens? They don't get along, they have an argument, and now you have one degree of separation, and that an adult coming and looking at some of these things, and a lot of thoughts are going through the mind. Even from a son-in-law or daughter-in-law perspective, something that your parents would tell you, you get all this under earth when your in-law tells you that, although it will be the same exact advice. So there are definitely, I think, a lot of psychological, just normal undertones that we don't realize, and addressing them and understanding them really can make for smooth marriages before and during, inshallah.
Another question relating about a marriage as well. The person wrote it in the feminine, but I'm going to keep it gender neutral in general, that as time goes on in a marriage, either one of the spouses takes less care of themselves in the home. Yet once there's something outside of the home, they'll get ready, they'll look great, they'll look amazing, and I'm going to put it both on men and women. You can imagine who this person put it on in the question, but I want to say both sides, that what can a person do when they feel like the other person isn't taking care of themselves in terms of, physically or emotionally, what have you. They're not taking care of themselves in the home, but seem to, take care of themselves outside of the home. So I'll leave that to any of you. It's a tough question. Who would like to jump in? I know you're scared of the answer. But I think it's a very real situation that as a woman in myself, I'll give you guys some buffer time to think. I know that sometimes in myself that we do have, I don't know if you want to call it laziness or tiredness, that it's been a long day at work. And we come home and the one thing we want to do is just relax, be home, be comfortable. Yeah, it's true that if there is a girls' party, we'll sprout right back up again and make sure we get our hair done, and we'll do the makeup, and we'll put an abaya over, and we all of a sudden get this renewed energy when it comes to our friends, and we don't seem to get that renewed energy at home. So I do see this as a very real issue, subhanAllah. and maybe I'll give this to Lubna first. Again, I didn't think it for my sister. Or should you want? Please go. No,
I really actually wanted to stay out of this conversation, but it just something came to my mind when you said what you said. Actually, so you did a good job of giving us time. It's just a question actually. So if someone comes home and but in one case there's a girls' party, and so they'll get up and they'll get ready and do that. For those of you who know my wife, this doesn't necessarily apply in my situation. She's not real big on girls' parties, but nonetheless, so the question is this: is that why? Why would a person find that much more energy to do that in that circumstance, but not the other one? And I think that that's an important question, because I would venture to say that a lot of times when people look at something as their right or their expectation, they don't give as much reinforcement or appreciation to the action as maybe would help to give the person more enthusiasm to do something about it. You know, so that was just something that came to mind.
I'm gonna say why. I mean, you only have to go. If you go out only once in a while, in other words, the husband comes home. Let's just put this on them, right? If the husband comes home, he's coming home for her every day. Every day. And that's a lot to get ready for her to get dressed up as this and that, the other, every single day. Once in a month, girls' party, okay, to do that. So there is a certain reality to that. So I had to throw a jab at you.
Yeah. No, I had something else too, actually.
Now everybody has something to say.
No, actually, the one thing I was going to say is not entirely related to this, is that sometimes, we have two extremes. Like, the expectation is that you dress up really nice at home, or you're really bummed. And I think that there is kind of like, you can be comfortable without being nasty. You could have, say you want to come home, for example, a lot of people in cultures, they'll come home and they'll put on a thobe. You can have a nice thobe that you wear at home, that's comfortable, that doesn't look bad. You don't have to walk around in you don't have to walk around in tamban all day long at home, right? Which is like just the pants without the top. So with like a shirt, instead of the kameez. But you get my point. Like, you could have something that's comfortable that you wear at home that doesn't look bad, and maybe that would facilitate things a little bit.
Could it be also that maybe, as women, that we do want a reaction, and maybe the reaction from the man, like, what's on your face, like, what do you look like, or what did you do, or doesn't even notice. But when we do go to the girls' party, it's like, mashallah, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, look at your eyes. You're all excited, and you get the reaction that you want to get from your sisters, but you don't get from your husband. I'm just throwing that in there as well. Maybe that's also the time that we know we'll get a positive reaction from our friends, but maybe not necessarily that same reaction from our spouses. I see women nodding. Hopefully.
I was going to allude to that. That can be a situation. But I definitely like pointing that back. Obviously those parties once in a while. It's not going to be all the time. So of course you're going to want to. But that idea of a reaction, obviously, if it's something that somehow the woman likes to do every day, the wife or what have you. Maybe the husband doesn't have to freak out every time that he sees her dressed out, but can at least comment, just like you make a nice meal. Anybody makes it, whether it's the husband or the wife makes a nice meal. You want some type of reaction, like, oh, that was good, right? Some acknowledgement that you like something. And so it is very important, I think, for the husband and the wife to notice a haircut. And I'm really big husband and wife. A haircut, a new shirt, taking themselves, whether with makeup or henna or whatever it is. But that type of acknowledgement, because some husbands will say, oh, what's that on your face? And some won't even notice because they're just walking by so fast. So, that's definitely there. But the other extreme that I think should come off a little bit too is sometimes there's this forced expectation, oh, my wife doesn't take care of herself. I got, wear earrings, wear the straight, whoa. Even if she does not work and you're home all day, you would thank God if you got a chance to step into the bathroom alone without any other visitor. And I mean a toddler. Right, I'm talking to the bathroom, and I'm sorry to be so, but I want husbands and men to understand that. And B, let alone, wow, if you could actually let water run over, your whole self. Actually, it's called the shower. So, I mean, and I think sometimes during the phases of, just after pregnancy, even 1, 2, 3 years, I think it's really important for new fathers to understand your wife does want to be glamorous. She does want to feel good about herself. Help her by saying, hey, if you want to take 15 minutes to yourself, come home and relieve her. It's not like, hey, baby, make yourself look good for me. It's not like that. It's like, go make yourself, go take some time for yourself. Give yourself 20, 25, seriously, this is time for you, and that person gets to refresh. So having this fake or strange, you should always be on your tippy toes and always looking the best. And I like also what Sheikh Kamal said about, make comfortable look good, and have that in mind when you buy clothes. Honestly, it doesn't have to be for women this really baggy, ugly sweat that probably have a hole in it, or for the husband, a hole with a sweatsuit hole or a shirt. It really should look good. If we're afraid to pray in that, honestly, we shouldn't be praying. The kids see that and your spouse sees it.
I want to say something. I've heard this statement attributed. I've never checked it in the books, but Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, a great scholar, that he said that jihad of women is just to make their prayers on time, 5 times a day. And what he meant by that is, in other words, he was acknowledging the struggle of women at home with a full load, with children, with a family, right? So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I mean, I think as men, we have this debate, right? Whose life is more difficult? Men, we go out all day and we work and we this and that. And women, we're at home with the kids and we're changing diapers and this and that. Whatever age they may be at. But the reality is, life is there's so much going on, and I think there has to be a level of fluidity and compassion for what's going on in each other's life. But we also have to realize that if you want to keep a marriage strong, there's certain you have to put effort into that too.
Inshallah, we're going to take it back to the single question. Inshallah, I'm going to direct this one to Sheikh Jamal, only because he jokes about being a convert, but I know. The question is, I am a convert, and I'm having a difficult time finding a spouse. I feel alienated from the community because I'm not Indian, Pakistani, or Arab. How can I pursue someone I'm interested in?
So first of all, I do consider myself a convert. I mean, I was a professed atheist. I think that's enough to consider.
I take it back.
Can you repeat the end of the question again? Because I'm going to make a comment that's going to be quite controversial, but I think it's important.
I feel alienated from the community because I'm not Indian, Pakistani, or Arab. How can I pursue someone I'm interested in?
Yeah, so
I'll give you time to think again.
no, it's just I want to figure out how to say something that's probably so. There's some converts are going to have more of an issue getting married than others. Generally speaking, if you're a brother, and you're trying to marry someone who comes from an Indian, Pakistani, or Arab background, you're probably going to have a harder time marrying one of those sisters. If you're a brother and you happen to be African American, you're going to have an even harder time marrying one of those sisters. If you're a sister and you're a convert, and I'm not saying this to make fun of anyone or anything, I'm just giving you raw facts. If you're a sister and you're a convert and you're white, you're probably going to not have a difficult time getting married. And if you're a sister and you're a convert and you're black, you might have a more difficult time getting married. But still, it's probably going to be easier for you to get married than the brother, just because you're a convert. And a lot of times, I don't want to get into my own perspective, but I think a lot of times people like to marry converts very early in their conversion because they think they're easier to control. But there's a lot of issues here. So there's a ton of issues here, and I think it's really difficult to address them, especially because one of the things that you'll see over and over again with converts is that people come into Islam with very high aspirations and ideals as to what Islam is supposed to be, and then usually, especially in the issue of marriage, it becomes a huge fitna for their iman, because that is the place where really most of the ideals that people have get shattered. And alhamdulillah, I thank Allah for my wife's family, may Allah increase them and bless them. They didn't shatter any of those things, rather reinforce them. So may Allah bless them. But it is a really serious issue. One of the things that we have, I'll give a couple general advices. So first, for brothers, I would encourage for brothers who are converts to really try to get established and comfortable in the Muslim community and with your understanding of Islam and your relationship with Allah before you go to get married. Because if you go to the sister's family and she's not a convert, and you go to her family and you feel really wrong, they're going to be afraid. Because there's always a fear like, okay, this person's a Muslim now, what if they're not next year? Or what if they don't understand certain things? Or what if there's still issues that they have from before? So try to improve yourself as much as you can and be very stable before you go. Also, manners is extremely important. I recommend this to everyone across the board. Read Islamic Manners by Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Bakr at least 5 times. This is a life mission for everyone. So this is number one. For sisters who are converts, I would very much recommend taking your time. So there's, depending on your situation, there may be a lot of people who all of a sudden want to marry you. I would not recommend that until, again, you become mature and stable and understanding in your relationship with Allah. This is a general rule. There can be exceptions, but this is a general rule. The third thing is that for sisters who are converts, and I ran into this very recently actually, just because you're a convert and your father is not a Muslim does not mean that you don't need to have a wali. You still need to have a wali. So you need to find someone who can fill that position. Someone came to me, they said the brother came, he wanted to marry me, and he told me because I'm a convert, I don't need a wali. I told her the brother is lying to you. Either he doesn't know, or he's lying to you. Because you need to have one. And there's a reason for that. That's a red flag, yeah. Well, there was a second red flag, which was they didn't want to have paperwork done either. So, this is my perspective on it. But I could be wrong. And just to be fair to the person, I could be wrong. But the point is, just because you're a convert doesn't mean you don't need a wali. But second point to that is, find someone who's going to be a wali who's reasonable and you can trust. It doesn't necessarily have to be any man. It can be someone who's older in the community, someone who's experienced, so on. But someone who's actually going to take the responsibility seriously. Not someone who's just going to be like, you tell the brother, oh, can you talk to my wali? And the guy says, yeah, alhamdulillah, and he sits with him for 5 minutes and says, sure, go ahead and do it. Something that's a little bit more, they're going to do the responsibility of your father, basically. So the third and fourth, whatever number we're on now, is that one of the things that we have at ICOI that has been very successful, and it's largely because of the sisters who are behind it, and Allah bless them and increase them, is the New Muslim Support Group. So alhamdulillah, every week we have a New Muslim Support Group, and we have amazing people who come, and it's, we average probably like 15 people a week. Some old converts, meaning like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, some recent converts, some people are not converts. But at least it gives an opportunity for people to engage with others. And it's not a gender-specific gathering. So men and women come to this, they can talk to others, they can meet people and stuff like that. But so my last comment, and I'll stop here because I'm over speaking now, is if you're a new convert and you want to come and get support and grow in this community, you're welcome. If you want to come and look for somebody to marry, you're not welcome. I'm just telling you right now. Okay? So like we have this gathering so people can talk to one another, so they can increase in their faith, so they can address any questions they might have. Alhamdulillah, last week we had for the first time a sister brought her non-Muslim mom to the gathering. So that her mom, who's not Muslim, can give advice to the Muslims who are new in Islam about their experiences and the struggles that they had. It's beautiful. But that's what we're trying to have there. We're not trying to have people who are just looking to like pick up on someone to get married. So I'll leave it here, inshallah. May Allah help all of us, and it's very difficult. This issue is really, really difficult, but it's not only difficult for converts. It's also very difficult for a lot of people that are born in Islam. So I recommend to everyone that first advice: make sure your relationship with Allah is strong. Nothing can fix that. If it's broken, nothing can fix it. If it's strong, nothing can break it. So this is the foundation.
Yeah, I just want to also warn against something that happens, especially soon after 9/11. It's still happening in some communities. bad intentions. They may not be genuine, but they're very, very few. They're very, very few. Most converts are genuine, very courageous people, people that Allah, if we were in their shoes, whether we would have had the courage and the strength to make a decision like that. It's a great. So we need to always have this positive perception because of the one, right? And just because of the one or two or few examples where, let's say, that person turned out to be informant or something like that, we should be very careful and not perpetuate this kind of become immediately suspicious and all of that, right? Especially if they're of a particular race. The also, is that when someone comes and says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, is that they're genuine about it. Until proven otherwise, until proven, guilty. And when Usama radiallahu anhu, the Prophet said, "Halla shaqaqta an qalbih?" Did you cut open his heart and see what was in his heart? So we have to assume that they're genuine and treat them accordingly and be kind and be genuine with them. The reason I'm saying this is because some families come with legitimate concerns. They're like, I am not really prejudiced. I don't have anything. In fact, I love comments and everything. But I heard these stories and some shuyukh and some of our neighbors and some of our relatives told us to be careful. What if this? We need to be very careful before we spread these kind of we share these kind of stories. Allah Ta'ala, I just want to say that.
Actually, the next question was for you, and then if anyone else like to add to this. You already talked about this, but it's subhanAllah, it's obviously on the mind of the single focus, and it repeats itself in many of the questions. The general idea is of how do we meet people in an Islamic way when it seems like all resources have been exhausted. My strict parents don't know anyone, and there's no one in my network. I've already tried matrimonial websites. Please help. There's a question right after, which I feel is relevant, so I'll just give it to you now for all of you to think about. Someone that says the anti-network can work really well sometimes, and I know they have the kindest intentions, but sometimes they just match up people who are completely incompatible for each other. Other times the antis can be rude and say comments such as, I want a white girl like you for my son. Is there any way for elders in the community to learn how to properly and appropriately match mate? So I know they're two separate questions. I just want to put both out there because subhanAllah, our singles are having a tough time and struggling with how do we go about meeting people. I know a lot of people go through the matrimonial, Hafardeen, the events, the website, and they're still having that hard time finding someone. And then when they try and go through an auntie or an uncle or a family member, they just find more despair. So I wanted to open up that question to all of you, inshallah.
Are you sure you want me to answer this question?
Yes, I'm positive.
I really don't want to hurt anyone, right? But I agree with you. We need to do this, inshallah. It's not a bad idea to have training to train people. But I think also people who are pursuing, who want to get married, they may need also to be taught. Again, please do not be offended. Please. Right? I mean it inshallah, with the best of intentions. They may need to also be taught certain communication and social skills. There may be, if you've been trying for a long time, and again, please, I'm not talking about anyone specific here. If you are having difficulties, if your case is unique, then you need to come and talk to us after the session, or and inshallah ta'ala we'll do our best to help, inshallah. But generally speaking, sometimes if you keep trying the same methods or the same techniques and they're not working, you're not getting a different result, there may be something else that you need to consider. You may be doing something wrong, and you might have to just tweak. There may be some things that you're doing wrong. There may not be anything wrong, but there may be, right? For instance, if it was up to me, we were doing research long time ago, on matrimonial websites or services, and I said we need to bring some experts who can teach people how to write a very effective, good profile, and how to have a good picture out there. Some of those pics, if you're not getting any hits, there may be something with the picture. Maybe it's not clear. Maybe the pose may not be appropriate, or may not be right for the type of person you're pursuing. Because you can't put a pose like that. You can't put a picture like that and then demand certain qualities that do not match with You get my point? So sometimes people may need to be taught, what to do or what to change or how to present themselves, right? Same thing when you're dealing with an auntie or an imam or anyone that you're basically seeking help from. There may be something, or you may not be even clear as to what it is that you want. So if it's not clear to you, how is it going to be clear to them? Right? I had individuals that came and said, I need your help the other day. I'm like, okay, so inshallah, what are you looking for? I'm like, and they're like, I don't know, what should I be looking for? I'm like, you're the one getting married, not me here. I need to sit with you and figure out what you should be looking for. I don't know. You tell me, what do you like? And that's why I said in the singles session that if you know yourself, you know your needs, if you're very honest with yourself and you take the time, the Sheikh Jamal mentioned that earlier, right? Because the same advice should be offered to everyone, not only converts. It could be for college graduates, high school graduates, anyone that was in a relationship and that relationship, didn't work. Take your time in figuring out yourself. When you know yourself, who you are, and I think you'll be better, able to tell, what is, what you need, and you will be able to, inshallah ta'ala, pursue it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will assist you. Allah ta'ala.
And so there's our third group that, of course, I don't want to leave out, and we had a discussion about earlier, the group of those who maybe have gone through divorce. And I know there's some questions about that, and this is an opportunity to kind of have that discussion in the form of the stigma around divorce. And I would love, again, for any one of you to jump in. But the concerns, I'm summarizing again the questions, but, since I've gotten divorced, I feel like an outcast. Someone says, I now feel isolated, and my faith is going down. I want to get remarried, but I feel like, I'm looked at as being less of a sounds like used. I feel like that I'm not as good as other women out there or men because of because that I was divorced. So there's a big stigma around women and men that have been divorced and are actively pursuing. They do wish to remarry, however, they butt heads up against these obstacles, this idea that they're not as good once they've been divorced.
Just a really quick comment. I think that this. So when you talk about something like divorce and the stigma that's related to it, I think it's very similar to stereotypes and to racism and all of these different things in the sense that there's two sides of it. The first side is that there are a lot of things in our community that have stigmas attached to them that really shouldn't. So counseling is one of them, and divorce is one of them. Divorce it's something that happens. It's not something that we seek per se, but it has actually there's a lot of bad consequences to putting the stigma on divorce. And the only one is, and divorcees not being able to get married is not the only one of those. One of those consequences also is people who are in abusive relationships then don't seek to get out of them because there's such a stigma related to divorce. So now you have someone who decides to stay in a relationship that there's no solution to this relationship except to end it. And there's a reason why in Islam we can end relationships. This isn't Catholicism per se. So this is number one. But so first side is that for people looking in, we need to, and this goes back to the knowledge and spirituality issue, we need to remove the stigma. There shouldn't automatically be a stigma on somebody just because they got divorced. Not to say that, one shouldn't wonder what happened, if they're going to consider that person, but there shouldn't automatically be a stigma. The second side of it is that for the person who's been divorced, and this advice then would carry over to converts, this advice would carry over to people who are traditionally discriminated against in our community, is that when you're in that category, you can oftentimes read stuff into interactions that isn't actually there, which will make it even worse. Not to say that the discrimination doesn't exist. It does. But it doesn't always exist. And so when you keep seeing it, then it becomes a barrier to your growth as well, which is also problematic. So I'll leave it there, inshallah, for everyone else.
I want to say something in regard to that. Sister Hussein was here last night for the program. She said something very profound about how the Prophet ﷺ said that Aisha was the only virgin that he married. She was the only virgin that he married. Most of the other women had been divorced, widowed, and so on and so forth. And she said, is your son better than Rasulullah so that you're going to have him pass up on a sister who's amazing in all realms of her being, but the only reality is that she was divorced. Is your son better than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And I would even say even one thing in addition to that, and this is this, that as men, and this troubles me a lot. This conversation, this dialogue about multiple wives. Islam allows men to marry more than one wife, up to 4. None of us denies that. The problem I have with the issue is when people joke about it. They joke about it, especially in front of other women, and it's just a joke. It's just the front of all jokes, right? Are you man enough to marry a woman that's been through hardship and difficulty, and maybe not even hardship and difficulty? She's just been through a bad marriage. I mean, that the guy on the other end, he was just a bum. Right? That's just the reality. And that's just her. And maybe he wasn't a bum. Maybe it was a personality conflict that they didn't get along. Whatever the case is, are you man enough to marry someone like that? We talk about, I'm going to marry a second wife and this and that. But how many guys are out there that are willing to take on the responsibility? Take on the responsibility. There's amazing women out there that are waiting. And the only reason they're getting passed off is because of that one label. So we have to really think about, who we are as individuals. I'm talking about the young men here. Let's own up to what it means to be a real man. It doesn't mean everybody has to go out there and marry a woman who's divorced, but you understand what I'm saying. Let's not make jokes about the institution of marriage and take it so lightly and so on and so forth. But let's own up to certain responsibilities that the community, to certain realities that are there in the community.
I did want to really address the social impact of divorce, because that's really important. That sometimes women feel ostracized by community. That automatically it's her fault, and the assumptions will go sometimes for the woman. Oh, maybe she didn't take care of herself, and these are things that go through people's minds. Honestly, maybe she didn't take care of herself. Maybe she wasn't doing this. Maybe she wasn't doing X, Y, Z. And all of a sudden, the community won't invite her to the same parties that her husband goes to, and even if they're not at the same time. They look down on her. Maybe you're the one who requested divorce. Whatever it is, we have to be a support for one another, because we would never want to end up in that situation, maybe ourselves or maybe our children, and we see that same pain being suffered. And subhanAllah, sometimes Allah does make that full circle for an individual, that they really look down on a certain group, and then all of a sudden that type of situation, they're confronted with that very situation. Secondly, sometimes you hear this, we let divorced women, all of a sudden, maybe my husband will want to marry her, so I don't want, let's keep her out. I mean, is that the way that we think? I mean, there's a lot of single women out there, so why would that thought go through our mind? Oh, don't talk to so-and-so, she's divorced, she's probably going to get married, and let me protect my husband from that. That's kind of a ridiculous thought. Thirdly, in terms of divorce in general, you never know what happens. It can be two very great people. Maybe one of those people made mistakes, and I don't even want to say it's infidelity or something haram, but maybe just some poor decisions at that time in their life, and it was with the wrong person. And they move on and they marry somebody else, and they have a fantastic marriage. There may be certain issues that they bring over and what have you, but it was just that those two people, Allah knows why, were meant to get married, maybe even have children together, and then move on and go their separate ways and start completely different lives. And we've seen successful cases of that. So it can happen. And there's no reason to sit and think, because I know a lot of couples that will say, you know what, we don't want to just air our dirty laundry to the whole community, and we're going to say, well, you know what, it didn't be divorced because this happened, and some people keep that private, so you'll never know what happened. And there's no reason, like what Sheikh Jamal said, there's no reason to start making judgments like we do with other things like race, with wealth, and those other things. This topic is brought up earlier.
Yeah. This is very awkward for me because it has been over 15 years since I went through the experience of divorce. And last thing I want anyone to think is that divorce is a very, very painful process. And unless you go through it, you don't know how painful it is, right? And sometimes people, yes, they don't choose it, but we have to be very careful because we have a lot of single people here. And I would like to say something. If you can afford not to go through it, don't go through it. So make sure that you choose carefully. Make sure that you choose carefully. It's a painful process. And I know sometimes, especially on the brother's side, they're like, okay, we'll try. And then if it didn't work, that's it. We're going to try again. They may have a second chance, and everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, right? But it's a very painful process. And if you can afford not to go through it, don't go through it. And if there's any way to avoid it, please, by all means, avoid it. It's not an easy process, right? So we don't want to make it look like, because the chances of a second and third divorce are even higher. But let me just say something. It takes a real man to consider a divorced sister. And it takes a normal woman to consider a divorced man. And these people should be actually saluted and celebrated, for giving someone a second chance to happiness. Recommend.
Thank you. We'll take questions in a minute. I have some more for you. Excellent. Thank you. Just two more questions. Sheikh Mahdi, I think Jamal, you guys brought up this earlier, the idea of discrimination, convert, non-convert, the gender, and so forth. But I wish for any one of you to take this on, this idea that a lot of times youth have the trouble of either they are of one race, but they meet someone of the opposite race. And I want to put two parts to this question. One, I definitely would love for any one of you to address the parents of why we need to really let go of that cultural connection, and really we need to reinforce the religion more than the culture. But I also want to put a spin on the other side that we cannot, as youth or someone who's looking to get married, just say, oh, see, my parents is racist, I'm going to go ahead with the marriage, and not really having that deeper conversation with the parents and saying, maybe the person is of the opposite race, but still not good for you. And it gets really messy and muddy, thinking, oh, see, I just have racist parents. So I want to kind of put two sides to that question, because sometimes as single individuals, when you're looking, you kind of say, just throw them off, well, I'm going to get married anyways, but it's not going to be they're going against Islam, and I'm going to get married anyway. So I want from two parts. What can you address the parents when it comes to your children wanting to marry someone that's not of your same culture, and to address the youth of what do they do when they face this difficulty? In terms of intercultural marriages, I would be the first one to point out that, mashallah, everybody sitting here in front of you, all the sheikh right here, mashallah, they're all have intercultural marriage. So that's it right there. Including myself. And mashallah, okay, hello. Mashallah, all of us. Alhamdulillah. You never know. Allah for sure. Alhamdulillah. So subhanallah, that's wow. Yeah, hello. I just realized that right now. So what does that mean? The power of keeping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the central, most important aspect of what you look for in a spouse, meaning is that person, does he care about Allah? Is he fearful of Allah when he makes mistakes? Yes, we all make mistakes, but is he someone that, if you give advice to that he'll think about it at least? SubhanAllah, that's the most important thing, that somebody cares about Islam, somebody cares about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the other cultural things, I know families that they are from the same family. Okay, I'll step back. They're from the same culture. They speak the same language. They're from the same village. And the same family, and subhanAllah, they fight cat and dog. SubhanAllah. They fight like crazy. So and I'll speak to some mothers, sister, help me find somebody for my daughter or my son. But it has to be this kind of culture, and it's a very specific culture. It's not even like, no, it's this specific culture. And I've had this from parents of all different nationalities. So what are we doing? You know what we do? Not pointing the finger, sorry. Do you know what we do when we say that? We're saying that I know the perfect formula for a marriage. But I will tell you and I think all of us will agree that the perfect formula for a marriage, at least a starting point, I'll not say everything, is that it begins with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A true, sincere person, and that's your job to find out what is really that person's connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That leads to a successful marriage. And then in terms of cultural differences and parents guiding their children, like you said, sometimes there may be a couple that maybe are not fit for each other. That has to be talked about from all different aspects. Our personalities such that, it's something that would really not work. Socioeconomic background, maybe some type of historical background that a person has. All of those aspects have to be looked at. But I will really urge all parents to consider the fact that true happiness lies, like what Dr. Marwa Azeb said, it's really that we share the same values, not necessarily the same interests, the same food, the same music, but I have to speak that same language. It really, really the language of Islam would be the one that would unify the hearts of a successful inshallah marriage.
I know it's 7:05 here. I know the program has technically ended at 7. I want to end with this question if anyone gets a chance to answer.
Sure. I just wanted to say one thing. I think there's an important trait in talent that's really important for everything in life, which is to be able to look at something, you get rid of all of the noise and the distractions and really find out what the real issue is, and what's really important. And I think that applies on both sides. So for young people, if your parents are against the marriage that you're interested in, how can you actually figure it out and get rid of all the distractions, figure out what the actual issue is? Some cases the parents will be reasonable, but we also haven't addressed the possibility that the parents might be absolutely unreasonable. So really you have to get rid of all the noise and get to what the point is. On the parent side, you have to get rid of all the noise and focus on the point. It's very difficult to grow up and sustain yourself as a Muslim in a society that does not help you to do that. This is really important. And as long as you make getting into a relationship that's going to support you in that struggle difficult, it's causing a lot of problems. So what is the main goal? The main goal is that my child grows up and lives and dies as a Muslim. What is the main goal in their marriage? That they marry someone that grows up and lives and dies and helps them to do so as a Muslim. This is the main priority. And you don't have a whole lot of great options. You have to be able to understand the reality. You don't have a whole lot of great options. And if you keep saying no for silly reasons, you're going to find yourself in a really bad situation. Because then it's going to be like, well, if I'm trying to do it right and it's not working, forget it. I'm just going to do other things. And then it's really bad. So and this applies, by the way, this concept applies on so many different levels when it comes to Islam and America. Don't pick fights that you do not need to pick. The battle is hard enough as it is. Do not pick a fight that you do not need to pick. If it's worth picking, fine. We're going to put our foot down here. But if it's not, do not pick that fight. There's no reason over food or language or something like this. This is really silly stuff. Now, there's a lot of bigger things that we need to worry about.
Well, I make it analogous to the parents of kids who play sports. How many of you guys have your kids here that play sports? Indeed, and this and that, right? So, you know that fanatic parent that is just trying to relive his glory that he never had when he was a kid, as a baseball player, as a soccer player, or this and that. That crazy parent on the side who yells at his kid when he does wrong, or when he kicks the ball wrong, or when he strikes out and all that stuff. That is the same thing as the parent of the child who wants to marry somebody else from another culture. Why? Because that parent is just trying to find somebody who they feel will match and live up to their world and the dreams that they envision for them, right? They're not looking at their kid. They're not looking at their young daughter or son who's blossomed and become an amazing Muslim individual, and you're going to cut them off because of what you wanted. Is very damaging. You all know what happens to that kid on the soccer field whose parent yells at him his whole life growing up playing soccer. Kids don't have anything to do with soccer, right? Because anything he does, he can never do it right, right? And so and it's the same thing. So we have to be very careful. There's many cases that we've come across like this, and one of them, the father was so insistent that his daughter marry somebody from their culture, and she had other individuals, and the individuals that they brought from their culture were just, a total mismatch, a total mismatch, but they were from their culture, that's what mattered. The poor sister, is now at an age where it's very difficult for her to get married. Like the father basically, inshallah, she's still going to get married. Inshallah, Allah's going to place someone in her life who's amazing. But as if the father's almost cut off her ability to the basic, which is absolutely nonsensical living here in this society and anywhere in the world for that matter.
I wasn't going to say this. I was going to try to be very objective and say, listen, cultural compatibility is key. It's one of those things that you really, because sometimes you don't realize how much your culture is part of you until you're actually challenged or until you're, So do not underestimate the culture is part of us. I personally feel like we're all one race, human race. We have different ethnicities, different cultures. And it sometimes takes a very special skill, not special skill, but it takes people with certain qualities. Some people are very adaptable. They can actually embrace and are open to change and all of that. So if you're that type and the other person is that type, then inshallah, most likely going to work, inshallah. So take all of these things into consideration. However, let's just close with the prophetic formula or recommendation. When a person with whom, and this is exactly what my in-laws, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did, and little they knew, when a person that you're satisfied with their religion or their religiosity and their character comes to you, accept. إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا. If you don't do that, if you refuse and you want to put some cultural values or anything else above the recommendation of the Prophet ﷺ, you bear the consequences. إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا تَكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ عَرِيضٌ. It will turn into a huge fitna, serious fitna, tribulation, crisis like the crisis that we have, like the crisis that they have in some Muslim countries where they have, 30 or 40% of their growth will not get married, will never get married, never have children. Because this prophetic recommendation is not followed. And then we wonder why we're suffering, why we're having all these problems. The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear. جَاءَكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ وَأَمَانَةً. Whenever someone with whose religion and character or integrity, right? Personality is very important. Key comes to you, someone suitable, then let the marriage go through. If you don't do so, if you don't do that, then تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ عَرِيضٌ. And the Prophet ﷺ was not joking, and we're seeing this happen in our communities and in our in many places. So we ask Allah to make some good, understand, uphold, respect, and give reverence to the statements and the recommendation of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Follow it and be blessed by that.
Before I just want to wrap up, I want to give each speaker, if they wish, 60 seconds to say something, but I'm going to give some announcements. So I'll give you each some time to think about if you do want to have one last comment to give. If not, that's fine. But part of this is, inshallah, that I think one of the major things that we've been hearing about is just how to get married, how to find the right spouse. And subhanAllah, a lot of times the whole world, I think all marriages somehow rely on these 3-4 people standing up here, right? All these people going up saying, find me a wife, find me a husband. But we have to also look at ourselves. What can we do to help facilitate these marriages? How can we help our youth meet people to get married? So I want to leave you guys with a thought and an idea that, inshallah, I think the people who organize this event have registration sheets downstairs. For those who are maybe married or wherever you are in your life, who says, yes, I want to help connect people. Because sometimes it's difficult when you call a matrimonial event or when you go to a website. Sometimes the best connections happen through friends, happen through people, happen through connections. So I kind of want to put the responsibility back on the audience of how you can help individuals get married. Because it's not enough for 3-4 people in the community to be the sole matchmakers for all the Muslims. So I encourage all of you downstairs, as there's going to be registration sheets, to write your name down. You know what? I want to help Muslims get to know each other. I want to create maybe a little database. I want to help maybe invite a few different people over to my home and have them just have a nice dinner and see if anything comes of that. So I want to put this responsibility back on the audience. If any of you are willing to participate and help with this issue, inshallah, like I said, there'll be registration sheets downstairs that you can put your email on and they can contact you for further information. In addition, one more thing that all of you who registered, you did put your email that we can get further updates about if there's going to be any more conferences or what have you. So please, if you did not write down your email when you registered, please do so you can get follow-up information and emails from the organizers of the event to see if there's going to be more like this, inshallah. So I know we have about 2 minutes left. So if anyone wants to have any closing remark, if not, we are done. Mocha's turning on her mic, so.
We have 20 seconds here.
We have 20 seconds. Okay, good. 20 seconds.
For the singles, make dua. And we'll all make dua for you. Ya Allah, may Allah contact with us, all of you with the righteous spouse. For married couples, I would say don't wait until things fizzle out and it's too late. If you're not happy, talk about it with your spouse in the right way. Work on it, work on yourself first. Don't let things go too far and let it just die out and everyone is unhappy. More time if you guys
Bismillah. So one advice is I think that in a lot of situations we have always to choose between principle and utility. Sometimes there's a principle, we don't see the benefit in it, but we need to maintain the principle. One of the principles is that we should be involved in our communities. When you're involved in your community, it will be easier for you to get married. In the long run, it will be easier. But that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it on principle, and the other part will take care of itself, inshallah. The last comment is that, subhanAllah, the hadith that Shaykh Faqih mentions, I don't think it's the AC, it might be, but sometimes you hear a hadith and it just gives you the chills. SubhanAllah. I mean, this hadith, SubhanAllah, think about how deep and profound, you see these hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and you feel like this is truly prophetic. It's really so powerful. So we ask Allah to help us to follow these things. Ameen.
The one thing that I would like to leave you with is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ibad al-Rahman, the servant of al-Rahman, the most compassionate. And one of their qualities is that they care so much about their spouses and their children that they make dua for them. And Allah tells us in another surah that one of the components of a successful marriage is rahmah, mercy, compassion. So the servant of the most compassionate have compassion in their home that will lead them to genuinely and desperately pray for themselves and for their spouses. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Invest in what you have, right, in terms of dua and effort and training and reading and research and quality time, and it will pay off. It will pay off. والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اجعل هذا الجمع جمعا مرحوما وفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا بيننا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم آت أنفسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. تبارك الله تعالى في يوم الدين واليوم القيامة.
You guys will have an after party. Not tomorrow. Maybe next night. We'll set up some rest. So are we not meeting afterwards, by the way? You probably are, but I can't. Oh, okay. See you later. Bye, girls. Yeah.
Dude, have the guys do the charity. Give them responsibility. I like waiting for Deanna to come back because I'm watching her laptop. I don't know, there's like 2 laptops. Oh, yours is here. Yeah, I'm kind of deciding whether to take it now or after. Yeah. I'm program for the county, and it's mostly whatever company provides services, they give that information to someone. So if that's something that they specialize in, then they will call them. This is what we specialize in. I just call them, and whenever somebody asks me for a source, I just call them and I say, I know this person, I live in this zip code, what kind of things do you do? Yep. And I mean, they'll usually they'll give you a minimum of 3 referrals, and then they email them to you one call, and then you can call them and get more details about what they're doing. I'm waiting for her to come back and watch her stuff.
She brings me back to that.
What color was it? You know what color it was? Brown. It's a little, it was like, really sad.
Is personal environment. Okay, let me ask you. Will you tell everybody what? Will you tell? I think you will tell. Yeah, I guess you will. She doesn't have the right to have it. She would not listen. She would not listen for. She would not listen for the conversation. She would listen for that last two words that she would ask. What was the conversation? So listen. guess I'm not that lucky. There's lots of people on stage.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة